200 Hells Angels came down Maple Street on a Tuesday morning in October. They did not come for a funeral. They did not come for a fight. They came for a 17-year-old boy named Tobias Vance, who 3 weeks earlier had given a stranger his last $10 on a flat tire in the rain, and then made the worst decision of his young life, trying to keep his dying grandmother alive. What those 200 bikers were about to do for that boy would either save his future or bury him before he turned 18. Toby's alarm went off at 5:30 every morning, not because he wanted to wake up that early, because he had to. His grandmother needed her insulin kept cold. The old refrigerator in the kitchen made a sound around 4 in the morning, a low, rattling cough. The compressor was dying. He could hear it through the wall while he tried to sleep. Some nights he lay there counting the seconds between the coughs. Some nights he could not. So Toby got up early, checked the temperature, made sure her medicine was still safe, then started his day. The house was small, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen with cracked tile, and a back door that did not close all the way in winter. The wallpaper in the hallway had been peeling since he was 12, curling away from the wall like it was trying to leave too. The window in his bedroom did not lock anymore. He had taped it shut with duct tape 3 winters ago and never gotten around to fixing it. But it was clean. Always clean. Nana Odessa insisted on that. We may not have much, she used to say, but we do not have to live like it. The way she said it, you could tell she had said it 1,000 times in her life, to herself, to a younger version of herself, to Toby, to the 4 walls that did not always feel like they wanted to stay standing. The words were a kind of prayer, she said, with a dish rag in one hand and a bottle of vinegar in the other. Nana Odessa. That was Toby's grandmother. 74 years old, diabetic, partial vision loss in her right eye, a heart that was tired in ways no one fully understood, an oxygen concentrator humming beside her bed every night like a small mechanical heartbeat, trying to keep the bigger one alive. The doctor had said the concentrator was a stopgap. He had said the words quietly, the way doctors say things to family, when there is no version of the news that does not hurt. Toby remembered nodding. He remembered driving home with his grandmother in the passenger seat. He remembered her humming a hymn under her breath the whole way. She had never once asked him to slow down. She had raised Toby since he was 8 years old. The boy did not talk much about why. The neighbors knew his parents had died. They did not know more than that. And Toby did not offer. He carried his past the way a man carries a stone in his shoe, quietly, with a slight limp no one noticed unless they were really looking. There was a photo on the mantel in the living room, a man and a woman young standing in front of a green Ford pickup. Toby never looked at the photo for more than half a second at a time. Nana Odessa never moved it. Some things in a house do not get spoken about. They just stay where they are. Nana Odessa had worked 31 years at a textile plant outside Cookville before her knees gave out. Then the diabetes came. Then the eyes started going. Then her heart began to slip. The doctor said she needed a heart transplant. He said it the way doctors say things when they already know the answer is no. $1.2 million without insurance. He said the number and then looked at the floor. 6 to 8 months, he said. Maybe a little more if she was lucky. Toby did not cry in that office. He sat very still, held his grandmother's hand, walked her to the car, drove home. He made her dinner that night, greens, cornbread, a piece of fried chicken. She ate slow. He sat across from her and watched her eat and did not let her see him not eat. Later, when she was asleep, he sat on the back porch in the dark, with the porch light off. He stared at the trees for 2 hours. He did not move at all. He did not pray. He did not curse God. He just sat there, like a man sitting at the bedside of a wife he was not going to get to keep. Every morning, Toby scrambled 2 eggs, one for him, one plated and covered with a folded paper towel for Nana Odessa when she woke up. He ate standing at the counter, backpack already on one shoulder. And every single morning, taped to the door of that old dying refrigerator was a drawing, yellowed at the edges, curling slightly. A crayon drawing of a little garage with a hand-lettered sign above the door. Vance Auto. Toby had drawn that picture when he was 7 years old. It had been on that fridge for 10 years. And every single morning he looked at it. And every single morning he looked away a little faster than the day before. He did not know who he was looking away from. He just knew that whenever his eyes lingered on it too long, something inside his chest got heavy, like a door he did not have the key to, like a song he half remembered but could not name, like a voice that had said something kind to him a long time ago, and he could not put the face back on the voice. School was school. Toby was a junior at Redville High. His grades were quiet, mostly B's, a few A's in anything that touched mechanics. The school had killed its shop program 3 years ago. Budget cuts. So Toby sat in study hall with a used auto repair manual in his lap. Pages' dog-eared margins crowded with his own handwritten notes in pencil. He had taught himself engine diagnostics at 13, electrical systems at 14, transmission theory at 15. He understood cars the way some kids understood video games. Not just the parts, but the way the parts talked to each other. The way a clean idle sounded different from a rough one. The way a transmission that needed fluid started to whine half a second earlier in the shift than it should have. He could feel a vehicle's health in his hands before he opened the hood. There was no guidance counselor at Redville High who saw any of that. There was no mentor. There was no path. So Toby went to work after school at the Fuel and Go gas station off Highway 12. 4 nights a week. He stocked shelves, mopped floors, ran the register, got home around 11, did his homework at the kitchen table until midnight, woke up at 5:30, did it again. He did not play sports. He did not hang out after school. The other kids drove trucks their parents had bought them. Toby drove a 2001 Chevy Cavalier his grandmother had owned since before he was born. A car older than he was, with a cracked dash, and a passenger window that would not roll down. Sometimes when the kids in the school parking lot saw the Cavalier, they would say something. Toby never heard it. Or he heard it and did not stop walking. There was a kind of armor a boy puts on when he learns young that other people's pity is worse than their cruelty. Toby had that armor on by the time he was 11. He was not bitter about any of it. That was the strange part. Toby Vance did not walk around angry at the world. He just lived inside a quiet kind of awareness that his life ran on different math than everyone else's. While other boys his age were worrying about prom dates and college applications, Toby was worrying about a copay. While other boys were posting pictures of their first cars online, Toby was rebuilding the carburetor on his grandmother's Cavalier in the driveway with a flashlight in his teeth and a manual on the hood. There was a peace in it, a small, quiet peace that did not look like peace from the outside. But it was his. Under his bed in a shoebox with a rubber band around it, Toby kept $43 in cash. 5 months of scraping, every spare dollar, every tip from the gas station, every dime that did not have to go to electricity or medicine. He used to be saving for a diagnostic scanner, The kind real mechanics use. The kind that could maybe one day turn a hobby into a real shop with his name on it. But that dream had quietly changed. Now the $43 was a buffer, a small wall between his grandmother and the moment when her medicine would run out. Every Sunday night he counted the money on the inside of the shoebox lid. He counted it the way a soldier checks the bolts on a rifle. Not because he expected the number to change, because the counting itself was the prayer. $43. $43. $43. And every Sunday night the number got harder to look at. Because $43 when you really sat with it was nothing. $43 was a single emergency away from zero. $43 was a car that did not start. A bill that came earlier than expected. A copay that went up. That was the life Toby Vance was living. The morning everything started. It started with his grandmother. Her blood sugar spiked in the night. When Toby checked on her at 5:30, she was sitting on the edge of her bed, dizzy, gripping the mattress with both hands. Her forehead was damp. Her breathing was shallow. He knelt in front of her. "Nana," he said, "I'm staying home today." Staying. She looked at him with her one good eye, the eye that still saw everything. "Boy," she said, "you are not missing school over my stubborn sugar. I raised myself before you got here. I can raise my own feet off this bed just fine. Go." He did not want to leave. Every part of him said, "Stay." But Nana Odessa had a way of making a suggestion sound like a commandment from God himself. So he grabbed his backpack, checked her insulin, filled her water glass, set the cordless phone on her bedside table where she could reach it without standing up, and left. He stopped at the pharmacy on the way home from school. Same pharmacy, same route, same errand. He had been picking up this prescription for 3 years. He knew the pharmacist's name. He knew the back wall of the store had a corkboard with photos of customers and their dogs. He knew the music they played was always 2 decades old. But that day was different. The pharmacist typed something into the computer, frowned, typed again, then looked up at Toby with the expression people use when they are about to deliver bad news to someone they feel sorry for. "There has been a formulary change on this prescription," she said. The copay went up. Toby stared at her. "How much?" $10 more than last time. $10. The number landed on his chest like a brick. He knew exactly what $10 meant. He knew it down to the penny. That 10 was the wall. That 10 was Sunday's count. That 10 was Friday's dinner. He pulled out his wallet, paid it, took the small white pharmacy bag, watched his scanner fund, his wall, his everything. Dropped from $43 to $33. He sat in the Cavalier in the parking lot, hands on the wheel, engine off, staring straight ahead at nothing for a long minute. He thought about Nana Odessa sitting on the edge of her bed that morning. He thought about the way her hand had trembled on the mattress. He thought about Friday, about what he was going to feed her on Friday if he could not make rent on Monday. He did not cry. He had learned a long time ago that crying did not change a number. Then he started the car and drove toward the gas station for his shift. On the way, he passed the empty lot on the corner of Maple and 4th. Weeds pushing through the cracked concrete, a lean-in for sale sign half-eaten by rust. Every time Toby drove past that lot, he glanced at it. Every time he imagined a garage there. Lifts, tool walls, a sign with his name on it. Every time he looked away. That day he looked away faster than usual. Route 12, 4 in the afternoon. The sky had been threatening all day. Low, bruised clouds, the kind that do not bluff. The wind was bending the pine trees along the highway. The temperature was dropping fast. You could feel a storm in the back of your throat when you breathed. Toby was 10 minutes from the gas station when he saw it. A motorcycle on the gravel shoulder. Not a small one. A massive, heavy vintage machine. Chrome and black. A 1972 Harley Shovelhead. Though Toby did not know the model yet, the rear tire was completely flat, shredded down to the rim. And next to it stood a man, late 60s, silver beard that hung halfway down his chest, a leather vest over a faded flannel shirt, boots that had seen more road than most cars ever would, big hands, a face that looked like it had been carved out of 50 years of hard weather and harder decisions. He was standing with his arms folded across his chest, staring down at the destroyed tire like it had personally betrayed him. Toby slowed the Cavalier. His first thought was to pull over. His second thought was the clock. His shift started in 30 minutes. He had already been late twice that month. One more time and his manager was going to cut his hours. He could not afford to lose hours. Not this week. Not with Nana Odessa needing the higher copay every 30 days now. Not with Friday already running thinner than it should. He looked at the old man. He looked at the sky. The first drops of rain were starting to hit his windshield. This stretch of Route 12 did not get traffic after dark. If nobody stopped, this man could be out here all night. In the rain. In the cold. At his age. Toby pulled over. He stepped out of the car. The wind caught his hoodie and whipped it sideways. Rain was already speckling his glasses. He walked toward the man. Gravel crunched under his sneakers. "Sir," he said, "do you need some help?" The old man turned, looked at him, did not speak. His eyes moved over Toby slowly. The faded hoodie, the old car, the young face, the thin shoulders, the way the boy stood with his weight evenly distributed like a kid who had been ready to leave a room since he was old enough to leave one. It was not hostility in that look. It was something else, something deeper. Like this man had spent his entire life measuring people in a single glance, and most of them had come up short. A long beat of silence, rain falling between them. Then the old man spoke. 2 words, flat, giving away nothing. "Tires done." Toby walked back to the Cavalier and popped the trunk. Inside, buried under a jumper cable and a jug of windshield fluid, was a basic tire patch kit. Cheap. From the dollar store. He had bought it months ago for a slow leak on his own car. He carried it back to the motorcycle and knelt on the gravel. The first problem hit him immediately. The Shovelhead's rear tire was heavy, way heavier than anything on the Cavalier. He tried to work the rubber free and his hand slipped. He repositioned. Tried again. Gravel bit into his knees. Rain came sideways now, stinging his face, blurring his vision. The old man stood a few feet away, arms crossed, watching. He did not offer to help, did not crouch down, did not even lean forward. It was not cruelty. Toby did not know it, but the old man's left shoulder had not rotated past 45 degrees in years. He had been thrown from a bike outside Birmingham at 62 at a chapter ride that had turned ugly when 2 kids from out of state had pulled knives on a brother of his. The brother had walked away. The old man had not entirely. 3 surgeries later, the shoulder had set the way a piece of driftwood. Sets after the tide leaves it on the beach. He could ride. He could lift a coffee cup. He could not on his best days get a stuck tire bead free on a wet rim. Underneath that leather vest was a chest that carried more old grief than old strength. He could not have helped if he wanted to. But this man would rather stand in the rain and watch a teenager struggle than admit weakness to a stranger. That was the kind of man he was. That was the kind of man he had been bred to be by every man who had come before him, all the way back to a boy who had run away from a foster home in Tennessee in 1962, with nothing but the clothes on his back and a hunger he could not name. So he tested Toby the only way he knew how, with silence. 5 minutes, 10. Toby's hands were raw. His fingertips were numb. The patch slipped the first time. He peeled it away, cleaned the surface, and reapplied. It did not hold. He exhaled long and slow. Started over. Third attempt. Steadier. More patient. He pressed the patch down with both thumbs and held it for a full minute. Rain hammered his back. His hoodie was soaked through. His knees were muddy and raw. He did not complain, did not look up for sympathy. He just worked. Something shifted in the old man's expression, like a locked door cracking open half an inch. "You're going to tear up your knees," the old man said. Toby did not look up. "I already messed them up falling off my bike when I was 12. These are the backup knees." The old man's mouth twitched, the ghost of a smile from a man who did not give smiles easily. He looked at the boy a beat longer, then looked away, toward the road, toward the gray distance where Route 12 curved into the pines. There was something in the line of his jaw that was no longer the line of a man assessing a stranger. It was the line of a man looking at something he had seen before. In a different life, on a different road, in a different rain. The patch held on the third try, but Toby knew it. Looking at that worn tube, that rusted rim, it was not going to survive 30 miles to Cookville. There was a place closer, a little tire shop called Grady's 4 miles up Route 12. Toby called from his cracked cell phone. A man named Grady answered on the 4th ring. "You got a tube that will fit a 72 shovelhead rear." Pause. "Yeah, $10, cash only." Toby's hand tightened on the phone. $10. He knew exactly what was in his wallet. One bill. Alexander Hamilton. The change from the pharmacy. The wall between his grandmother and the long dark. He looked at the old man. The old man's face gave nothing. Rain ran down the creases beside his eyes. He was not asking for anything. He just stood there, the way a mountain stands. The way a man stands when he has spent 68 years on earth, learning that the people who help you in the rain are the only people worth knowing, and the people who do not are not worth a single second of your grief. Toby looked at the sky, darker by the minute. No headlights in either direction. He thought about Nana Odessa alone in that house, her chest rising and falling under the hum of the oxygen machine. He thought about Sunday's count. He thought about Friday. He thought about what kind of man it would make him if he got back into that Cavalier and drove away and left this old man standing in the rain to die of exposure on a stretch of road nobody traveled at night. He reached into his wallet, took out the bill, looked at it for 2 seconds. 2 seconds where everything flashed. Insulin, groceries, the shoebox under the bed. Then he got in the Cavalier and drove to Grady's. The shop was a single bay attached to a clapboard house with a porch full of old tractor tires. A man came out wiping his hands on a rag-white hair glasses 60 years old, maybe 70. He looked Toby up and down and did not say anything but the price. Toby handed him the bill. Grady put the tube in a paper sleeve. Then he paused, looked at the boy, looked at the boy's soaked hoodie and the mud on his jeans. "You doing this for somebody's son?" he asked. Toby nodded once. Grady looked at the bill in his hand, looked at the boy, looked at the bill again. Then he reached into a drawer behind the counter and took out a small black valve cap and slid it across the counter. "Free," he said. "Tell your friend the cap was a courtesy." He held Toby's eyes for one more second. Then he turned back toward his workshop and did not look back. Toby drove back to the bike, knelt in the mud again, installed the tube properly this time. Careful, precise. The way the manual taught him, even with shaking fingers and rain blurring his glasses. He did not know it, but while he was at Grady's, the old man had slowly lowered himself to one knee beside the bike. Alone, in the rain. He had run his thumb along the edge of the failed patch, looked at the clean angle of the work. He had been around mechanics his whole life. He knew the difference between someone guessing and someone understanding. This kid was understanding, quietly, without showing off. The kind of understanding that gets passed down, the kind that does not come from a manual, the kind that comes from somebody somewhere in this kid's past who had once put a wrench in his hand when he was very small and told him to listen to the way the bolt clicked. When Toby came back, the old man was standing again, as if he had never moved. Toby finished, stood up, jeans caked with mud, hands scraped and raw, shivering so hard his voice came out unsteady. "That tube should hold to Cookville," he said. "There's a Harley dealer off exit 14. They'll set you up right." The old man looked at the repair, then at Toby. A long, measuring look. "What's your name?" "Toby." "Tobias Vance." "How old are you?" 17. Something moved behind the old man's eyes. Just for a second, like a memory had walked past a window inside him. 17. He reached into his vest, pulled out a small, worn leather case, removed a single card. Cream-colored. Thick stock. Just a name. B. Whitlock. A phone number beneath it. No title. No company. No logo. "You ever need anything," the old man said, "you call that number." Toby took the card, glanced at it, tucked it in his back pocket without really thinking. He was already doing the math. $10 gone. Shift started 50 minutes ago. Friday felt very far away now. The old man kicked the Harley to life. The engine roared, deep rolling thunder that shook the wet air. He pulled onto Route 12 without looking back. Toby stood on the shoulder, rain pouring down his face, watching the taillight shrink into the gray distance until it vanished. He stood there longer than he meant to. The light was almost gone. The wind was cutting through his soaked hoodie like wire. But he stayed. Because somewhere inside him, very quietly in a place he did not have a name for, he had the sense that something had just happened that he was not going to fully understand for a very long time. Then he got in the Cavalier, started the engine on the third try, drove to the gas station, clocked in 52 minutes late. His manager docked his pay without asking why. Toby did not explain. He tied on his apron and started restocking the cooler. Same as always. He went home that night, stood in the kitchen for a moment with the wet hoodie still on his shoulders, looked at the crayon drawing on the fridge, looked away, put the cream-colored card on his dresser. forgot about it, or told himself he forgot about it. It was the same thing in the dark. But 2 nights later, a man would walk into that gas station whose face Toby would never see, and the wheels of something much larger than a flat tire would begin to turn. It was a Wednesday, 11:15 at night. The kind of weeknight where the station was empty except for the buzz of the coolers and the soft hum of the freezer in the back. Toby was wiping down the counter with a rag that should have been thrown away a month ago. His apron had a coffee stain on the front from a customer who had spilled at 6 o'clock. The radio above the cigarette case was playing something slow and country. Nobody to hear it but him. The bell over the door rang. A man walked in, middle-aged, maybe 50, heavy set, wearing an old faded Bandidos cut. The rocker on the back was worn but readable. He had a low ball cap pulled down so that the brim shadowed the upper half of his face. Toby could not see his eyes. The man kept his face tilted just slightly toward the floor every time he passed under the fluorescent lights, like a man who already knew exactly where every camera in the store was hung. A man who had been in 100 gas stations like this one, who had done this kind of walk before. He walked the aisles slowly, picked up a bag of beef jerky, put it back, picked up a coffee from the machine, set it on the counter. Toby rang him up. $2.12. The man paid, did not move. "You're the Vance boy," the man said. His voice was low, soft, almost friendly. The kind of voice that has been practiced in a mirror until it sounded harmless. Toby's hand paused on the register. "Yes, sir. I knew your grandma's neighbor years back," the man said. "Old woman with bad eyes. Bad heart now, too, I hear." Toby did not answer. "That's tough," he said. "Real tough. Heart transplant up at Vanderbilt. That's what $1.2 million without insurance." He let that number sit there in the fluorescent buzz, long enough that it became a weight on Toby's shoulders. I might know a way, the man said, for a smart kid to put a dent in that number. Real fast. One night's work. Toby kept his hand on the counter so it would not shake. "What kind of work?" The man smiled under the brim of his cap. Toby could see the smile, not the eyes. Behind the Methodist church on Cedar Street every Sunday night, a man parks a custom Harley Panhead. Beautiful machine. Pearl black tank. Skull etched into the timing cover. "I do not need the bike. I just need the engine. Clean pull. You know how. You're a mechanic." I checked. Toby felt the air in his lungs go thin. I am not. The man held up one hand. "Easy. Not telling you to do anything. Just telling you $5,000 cash for that one engine. If you're interested." He slid a folded piece of paper across the counter. An address. Nothing else. Same hand pushed the coffee toward Toby untouched. "Keep the coffee," he said. "On me." He walked out. The bell rang. The door closed. Toby stood there for a long time, looking at the folded paper, the cup of coffee, his own reflection in the dark front window. Behind that reflection, the empty parking lot. Beyond that, Route 12. And somewhere down Route 12, his grandmother. Sleeping. Breathing. Counting. He drove home that night with the paper in his pocket. Tried to throw it in the trash on the porch. Could not. Put it on his dresser next to the cream-colored card. 2 pieces of paper. 2 roads. He did not know yet which one he was already on. He did not sleep that night. He lay in his bed staring at the ceiling. The duct tape on the window rattled in the wind. The refrigerator coughed once, twice, settled. He thought about the man, about the brim of the cap, about the way he had known exactly which words to say. Bad heart. Vanderbilt. 1.2 million. Those were not words a stranger came up with by accident. Those were words someone had taught him to say. Someone who had been watching Toby long enough to know what would break him. The next morning at school, his algebra teacher asked him a question, and Toby did not hear it the first time. She asked it again. He answered. Wrong. The class moved on. He stared at the page in front of him and did not see a single number on it. That afternoon at the gas station, he reached into his pocket 3 times to throw the folded paper into the trash can behind the counter. 3 times his fingers closed around it. 3 times they did not let go. For 3 days he did not touch the paper. He went to school. He went to work. He cooked dinner for Nana Odessa. He watched her hand tremble around the spoon. He watched her struggle to stand up from the recliner. He watched her smile through it. We are fine, baby, we are fine. On the 4th day, the kitchen sink stopped working. The pipe under the drain was older than Toby was. Plumber said the repair would be $300. Toby thanked the plumber and said he would call back. He never called back. He moved a 5-gallon bucket under the sink and started carrying the gray water out to the backyard at the end of each night. On the 5th day, Nana Odessa's cardiologist called. He said her ejection fraction had dropped. He said the word transplant out loud. He said it gently, like he was setting a glass down on a wood table. He said the financial counselor would call. Toby did not pick up when the financial counselor called. On the 6th day, Toby stood in the middle of the kitchen at 11 at night. The refrigerator coughed once, then twice, then settled. He looked at the crayon drawing of Vance Otto, yellow at the edges, curling slightly. He looked at the bedroom door behind which his grandmother was sleeping under the steady mechanical pulse of the oxygen machine. Then he walked into his room, picked up the folded paper from his dresser, put on his hoodie, and went out the back door. He told himself it was for her. He told himself it was just an engine. He told himself it was one night. He told himself a lot of things on the drive over to Cedar Street. None of them sat right in his chest. But he kept driving anyway. The Methodist church parking lot was almost empty. Street light at the far end. A single security light over the side door. The church itself was a low brick building with white wood trim and a steeple that looked too small for it. Somewhere down the block a dog was barking. A train was running far off, very faint, 2 counties away. The kind of sound you only hear when the rest of the world has gone quiet enough to let you hear it. And there, parked in the deep shadow between 2 oaks, was the bike. It was beautiful. Pearl black tank, long fenders, hand-stitched leather seat. The custom skull etched into the timing cover, catching the streetlight like a small white eye. Whoever owned this bike loved it. You could feel it just standing next to it. There was care in every line. Toby felt sick. He told himself he could still walk away. He could go home. He could put the paper back on the dresser. He could pretend none of this had happened. He could go to school in the morning and clock in at the fuel and go at 4 and live the same small life. But then he thought about Nana Odessa. The way her breath caught at night. The way the oxygen machine was the only thing in the house louder than her heart. The number. 1.2 million. The way the cardiologist had said the word transplant. He took the tools out of his backpack. He worked the way the manual had taught him. Carefully. Methodically. He drained the oil into an empty jug he had brought with him. He disconnected the wiring harness, labeling each connector in pencil. on a small notepad so he would not damage anything that did not need to come off. He pulled the exhaust. He undid the motor mount bolts in the correct order. He braced the frame on a piece of 2x4 he had thrown in the trunk. 90 minutes later, the engine slid free, and he wrapped it in an old blanket like he was wrapping a dead thing. He did not look at this timing cover again. He could not. Every time his eye drifted toward that small white skull, his stomach turned over. Somebody had carved that by hand. Somebody who loved somebody. The thought came up out of him like bile, and he pushed it down and kept working. He drove to the address on the paper. A storage facility just past the county line. Unit 119. The metal door was already half rolled up. The man in the Bandito's cut was waiting inside. Brim of the cap still low. Face still half hidden under it. He looked at the engine in the blanket. He nodded once. He handed Toby an envelope. Toby opened it just enough to see the green inside. $5,000. In hundreds. Brand new. Sequential. The man's hand landed on Toby's shoulder. Heavy. The grip was not friendly. "You did real good, kid," he said. "Now you forget my face. You forget this address. You forget this night. Forever. You hear me?" Toby nodded. The man's hand stayed on his shoulder. 1 second longer than it needed to. Then it was gone. The metal door rolled down. The light inside the unit went out. Toby drove home in the dark. The envelope on the passenger seat. The wrapped engine no longer his problem. He felt nothing. Or maybe he felt everything at the same time, and his body just did not know how to sort it. He kept telling himself the same sentence over and over the whole way home. It was just an engine. It was just an engine. It was just an engine. He pulled into the driveway, turned the headlights off, sat there in the dark with the engine running. He did not go inside for 15 minutes. He could not. He kept thinking about the white eye on the timing cover. He kept thinking about hands. Somebody's hands. Somebody had spent hours with a fine tool on a porch maybe, or in a workshop, etching that skull line by line. Somebody had loved somebody enough to do that. He finally went inside. He hid the envelope in the shoebox under his bed. He did not count the $43 that night. He could not look at the lid. He did not know that night what he had really done. He did not know that the custom Harley panhead behind the Methodist church did not belong to some anonymous local rider. He did not know it belonged to Dutch Holloway, president of the Bandito's Motorcycle Club, sworn enemy of the Hells Angels for 30 years across 4 states. He did not know that the skull on the timing cover had been etched by hand by a woman named Helen Holloway 20 months before she had died of cancer in a hospice bed in Memphis. That panhead was the last gift she ever gave her husband. That engine was not metal to Dutch Holloway. That engine was the last living piece of his wife on this earth, and Toby Vance had taken it. He also did not know that night that the man in the Banditos cut the man whose face he had never seen did not actually want that engine for himself. The engine was bait. The man was a senior bandito. He had been quietly losing his standing inside the club for years. He had decided months earlier that the only way to take Dutch Holloway's seat as president was to start a war big enough that Dutch would not survive it. He needed someone to steal that engine. He needed it to look like a Hells Angels job. He needed Dutch to believe the Angels had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. And he needed a fall guy. A kid. Black young broke easy to find, easy to point at, easy to write off. Someone the cops would believe stole the engine for cash, and the Banditos would believe stole it for Bo Whitlock. And then, on Route 12 in the rain, that kid had knelt in the mud for an old man in a leather vest. And the news had reached the man in the cap. And the man in the cap had smiled in a way that no one ever saw. The kid was perfect. 48 hours later, the banditos came for Toby Vance. The first warning was the sound of bikes, 3 of them, idling at the end of his street at 2 in the morning. Toby was in bed, awake. He had not slept right since the night at the storage unit. He sat up, looked out the duct-taped window, saw the headlights, saw the chrome, saw the cuts. He had never been afraid like that in his life. Then his phone buzzed, a number he did not recognize. He answered, a man's voice on the other end, old, gravel, calm in a way that was somehow worse than yelling. Tobias Vance, yes. You took something that belonged to me. You have 1 hour to bring it back. Otherwise, the next ride down your street will not be 3 bikes. It will be 30. And we will not knock. Toby's hand was shaking so hard he almost dropped the phone. I cannot, he whispered. I do not have it anymore. I sold it. I sold it to a man. I do not know his name. I do not know his face. Long silence on the line. Then the old gravel voice spoke again, quieter this time. Boy, you picked the wrong bike. You picked my wife's bike. So you tell me right now, who put you up to it? Or you and your grandma in that little house on Maple will be a story this town tells for a long time. Toby's eyes went to the dresser, to the cream-colored card. B. Whitlock. A phone number. He did not know who that man was. He did not know what that card meant. He had no reason to believe a stranger with a flat tire and a worn leather vest could help him. But he had no one else. Nana Odessa was asleep down the hall. The police could not save him from this. Nothing in his life could save him from this. He hung up on the gravel voice. He dialed the number on the card with hands he could not control. It rang once. It rang twice. It rang 3 times. On the 4th ring, a voice picked up. Deep, steady, awake. As if a man somewhere had been sitting in the dark waiting for this exact phone to ring. Talk to me. Toby could not breathe. It is me, he said. The kid. Route 12. The tire. I am in trouble. I am in real trouble. I think I am about to die. Long silence on the line. Just the sound of the old man breathing. And in the background, very faint, the soft sound of an engine being started. The voice came back, steady as steel. Where are you? Maple Street, 411. Redville. Lock the doors. Get your grandmother into a back room. Stay off the windows. I am 90 minutes out. The line went dead. Toby stood in the middle of his bedroom, the cream-colored card crumpled in his fist. Outside at the far end of Maple Street, 3 bikes still idled in the dark, watching the house, watching him, waiting. Toby Vance did not know it yet. But the man on the other end of that phone was Beauregard Whitlock, founding president of the Hells Angels. 312 members across 4 states. And he was already on Route 12. Beau had not been asleep when the phone rang. Beau had not been asleep in 20 months. Some men, when they lose a wife, go to bed earlier. Some go to bed later. Beau had stopped going to bed entirely. He slept in a leather recliner in his study 4 hours at a time. A glass of bourbon and a paperback novel on the side table. The front door unlocked because there was nothing in the house worth stealing that he was not already willing to give away. He had heard the boy's voice on the line. He had heard the words, "I think I am about to die." He had put the phone in his vest pocket. He had walked out to the workshop in his slippers and pulled on his boots, his cut, his gloves, his helmet. He had kicked the shovelhead to life at 1:57 in the morning. The same shovelhead Toby Vance had repaired in the rain. 90 miles of dark road. 90 minutes. Bo rode them the way a man rides toward a thing he should have prevented a long time ago. There was a feeling that had been growing in him since the moment a boy in a hoodie had knelt in the gravel and worked a wrench in the rain without complaining. A feeling Bo had not named at the time. He had pushed it down. He had ridden away from Route 12 telling himself he was just an old man with too much sentiment in him these days. He had told himself the card was a courtesy. He had told himself the boy would never call. He had been wrong about all of it. He had been wrong about most things since Marlene died. Marlene Whitlock had been a horsewoman from Tennessee. She had married Bo in 1968 on a Sunday afternoon in a small Baptist church outside Harland with a borrowed dress and a borrowed ring. She had ridden behind him on the shovelhead for 37 years. She had been thrown from a different bike 6 years back on a wet road in the Smokies. She had been alive when they got her to the hospital. She had been alive for 2 more days. Then she had not. Bo had ridden home from that hospital alone for the first time since he was 22 years old. The first thing he had done when he walked into the workshop, he had pulled the wedding ring off and put it in the top drawer of his tool chest under a clean rag. And then he had gone back outside and he had sat on the porch and he had not moved for 9 hours. He had not been a particularly good president of his club after that. He had kept the chair. He had not stepped down. But the men around him knew in the quiet way the men in clubs know things that the man who had founded the Tennessee Hells Angels was not coming all the way back. Some of him had stayed in that hospital with her. Now he was riding 90 miles for a boy he had met once. And he could feel something he had not felt in 20 months. He could feel his hands on the bars. He could feel the cold air against his beard. He could feel a purpose pressing against the inside of his vest, like a heartbeat he had forgotten he had. He thought about the boy as he rode, about the way the kid had not complained, about the way the kid had paid $10 for a tube he could not afford to pay $10 for, about the 17 years old, about the 17. Bo had been 17 once, in an alley behind a welding shop in Nashville, in 1962. Nobody had been coming for him. Nobody had been on a road at 2 in the morning for him. Until a man named Otis Freeman, who was not his father, and had no reason to do what he did, had stepped out of a side door and seen a starving black boy crying behind a dumpster and said, "Son, get up. You are coming inside. I have soup, and if you can hold a torch steady, I have work." Bo Whitlock had spent 52 years of his life trying to pay back what Otis Freeman had done for him in that alley, and he had never quite managed it, not in the way that mattered, not in the way that closed the circle. But somewhere on Route 12 in the cold, dark 90 miles outside of Redville, he could feel the circle starting to close. Beauregard Whitlock arrived at 3:47 in the morning. One bike, no escort. Headlight cutting through the dark like a question. He pulled up in front of the house and killed the engine. He sat there for a moment, listening, looking down the street. The 3 banditos at the far end of Maple started their engines, but they did not move forward. They saw the vest. They saw the rockers. They saw the silver beard and the broad shoulders and the calm way he set his boot down in the gravel. And they understood without anyone saying a word that whatever had been coming for the boy in that house was not coming through Beauregard Whitlock to get to him. The three banditos' engines revved once, a warning, a promise, and then slowly they turned around at the end of Maple Street and rolled away into the dark. Beau watched them go. Then he stepped up onto the porch, knocked twice, soft, like a man knocking on the door of a friend's house in the middle of the night, because something terrible had happened. Toby opened the door. His face was wet. He had not realized he had been crying. Beau looked at him. Really looked at him. The faded hoodie, the shaking hands, the shoebox-sized hole somewhere behind his eyes. "Son," Beau said. Just that. One word. And Toby Vance, who had carried this alone for 6 days, who had been a man for too many years, before he should have had to be, took one step forward, and the old biker caught him under the arms before he hit the floor. Beau lowered him to the porch boards like a man lowering something fragile that had finally given out. Toby's knees folded under him. The crumpled card was still in his fist. The rain had started again, soft now, a whisper instead of a hammer. Inside the house, the oxygen concentrator hummed steady in the back bedroom. Nana Odessa slept through everything. She did not know 3 banditos had idled at the end of her street. She did not know a stranger had ridden 90 miles through the dark to sit on her porch. She did not know any of it. And Toby, holding on to Beau's vest like a child, holding on to a railing on a steep stair, made a quiet, broken sound and said, "Do not let her wake up. Please. Do not let her see me like this." Beau Whitlock looked at the boy, then at the door of the bedroom where the soft mechanical pulse of the machine kept rising and falling, then at the street, then at the sky. "She will not see anything tonight, son," he said. "I promise you that." He helped Toby stand, walked him into the kitchen, sat him at the small table under the dying refrigerator, poured a glass of water from the tap, set it in front of him. Then he sat down across from him, folded his big hands on the table, and waited. Toby could not look at him. He stared at the water, at the crayon drawing of Vance Otto curling at the edges, at his own scraped knuckles. Finally, in a voice that did not sound like his own, he told Beau everything. The man in the cap, the Methodist church, the panhead, the skull on the timing cover, the $5,000, the wrapped engine, the storage unit, the phone call, the gravel voice on the other end of the line. Beau did not interrupt, not once. He listened the way old men listen when they already know the worst parts. His face did not change, but somewhere behind his eyes, very slowly, a door was opening, a door he had kept locked for a long time. When Toby was finished, Beau let the silence sit there for a long moment. The refrigerator coughed once, then settled. "You did not steal that engine because you are a thief, son," Beau said. "You stole that engine because somebody studied you. Somebody watched you long enough to learn what would break you. Then they walked in here and they broke you on purpose. There is a difference between a kid making a bad choice and a kid being hunted. You were hunted. Do you understand me?" Toby's hands were shaking around the glass. "I took something that did not belong to me," he whispered. "I do not get to be the victim of that." Beau leaned forward. "No," he said, "but you do get to come back from it, and nobody comes back alone. Look at me, son." Toby looked up. "Whose bike was that?" he asked. "Tell me again. Say his name." "He said it was his wife's bike," Toby said. "He said her name on the phone. I think he said Helen." Something moved across Beau's face, just for a second. almost too small to see. Helen Holloway, Bo said quietly. And the man who called you that was Dutch. Dutch Holloway. He runs the Bandidos. He has run them since before you were born. He buried Helen 20 months ago, son. He has not stopped grieving since. That engine was the last thing she ever gave him. That is what someone made you steal. Do you understand the size of what was set on fire here? Toby's stomach turned. The room felt small. Why, he whispered. Why would somebody do that to him? To me? To my grandma? Why? Bo looked at the window, at the dark outside, at the 3 sets of taillights that had been there an hour ago. Because somebody wants my club and Dutch's club to put each other in the ground, he said. And somebody believes that if Dutch buries his wife's engine and a black kid in the same week, my boys will ride down on Bandito country with everything we have. And if we do, half of the men I have known for 40 years will not come home, and neither will half of his. And somebody somewhere will be sitting in the rubble afterwards, wearing a cut that fits a little better than it used to. That is what you walked into, son. That is what was waiting for you behind that church. Toby's eyes filled up. He pressed his hands flat against the table. I am sorry, he said. Sir, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. I did not know. I did not. I would never have. Bo reached across the table, closed one big rough hand over both of Toby's, held them there, the way a man holds the hand of a son. I know you would not have, he said. I know. Then he stood up. Get a coat, he said. We are going to Dutch. Toby looked up at him. What? You and me? Tonight? Before sunrise? Because if I do not put my face in front of his face, before another man gets a chance to whisper in his ear, this is going to end the way somebody planned it to end. So put your coat on, son. We are going to look him in the eye, and we are going to tell him the truth, and we are going to let whatever happens happen. But you are not going to face this man alone in the dark, not on my watch. Toby looked at the closed door of his grandmother's bedroom. What about her? I have a brother named Cyrus, Bo said. He is 15 minutes out. He is already moving. He will park his bike right out front in this driveway, and he will sit on this porch with a thermos of coffee until the sun comes up. Anyone comes near this house tonight, they go through him. And nobody goes through Cyrus Pruitt. Understand? Toby nodded slowly. Bo softened. Just a little. Your grandmother will sleep, son. She will wake up tomorrow and she will not know anything happened tonight. That is a promise. Cyrus Pruitt arrived 12 minutes later. He did not knock. He parked his bike on the gravel at the end of the driveway, killed the engine, dismounted and walked up to the porch with a thermos of coffee in one hand and a small folding stool in the other. He was a big man in a black t-shirt and a Hell's Angels cut, 63 years old. Shaved head, beard short and gray. He had been Bo's vice president for 31 years. He had been Bo's brother for 41. He set the stool down on the porch boards, set the thermos beside it, looked at Bo through the screen door, said only one word. Go. Bo nodded once. Toby pulled on his old coat, the one Nana Odessa had bought him at a thrift store when he was 14. The sleeves were 2 inches too short. He had not grown out of needing it. They walked past Cyrus on the porch. Cyrus did not look at Toby. Did not need to. He was already settled into the stool, the thermos uncapped in his big, rough hand. His eyes already on the dark end of Maple Street, where the 3 Bandidos had been 30 minutes earlier. He was a man who had been told to sit and watch, and he was going to sit and watch the way other men breathed. Bo put a hand on Cyrus's shoulder as he passed. Just for a moment. The way men say thank you when there are no words for what they are thanking each other for. Then they were on Route 12 again. Toby in the passenger seat of the Cavalier. Bo on his shovel head in front of them. The tail light of the bike a small red eye in the dark. Toby followed it through the pine country, through the curves he had driven 1,000 times in daylight, through a part of the night that did not feel like the night he had grown up in. He did not know where they were going. He knew only that whatever was coming, he was not coming alone. And that more than anything that had been said on the porch was the thing that kept him from coming apart at the steering wheel. They met Dutch Holloway at Lurleen Boone's diner. It was the only place in town open at 4:30 in the morning. The diner sat on the corner of Route 12 and Pine, a small white building with a red roof and a neon sign that had been buzzing since 1979. Lurleen had owned it for 41 years. She had inherited it from her mother, who had inherited it from her aunt, who had bought it in 1956 with the settlement money from a bad fall at a chicken plant outside Memphis. 3 generations of women had served eggs and grits to the men of 2 counties out of that single building. Lurleen knew everybody. Lurleen had buried 2 husbands and a son. Lurleen did not flinch at anything that came through her door anymore. She was behind the counter in a faded blue apron, pouring coffee for a long-haul driver, who was the only other customer. She saw Bo walk in. Then she saw Dutch walk in. Then she saw the boy. Then she looked at the long-haul driver and said, "Sweetheart, your eggs are on the house, but you are leaving now." The driver did not argue. He had been around long enough to know the difference between a request and a warning given in a kind voice. He left. Lurleen turned the open sign around to closed, locked the front door, walked back behind the counter and started another pot of coffee. She did not say a word to any of the 3 men in the booth, but she watched them with the slow, careful eyes of a woman who had been watching men in booths for 40 years. The eyes of a woman who had seen the way conversations like this could end, and the way they did not have to end if everybody in the room kept their hands above the table. Dutch Holloway sat across from Bo. He was 67 years old, heavy, white-haired, mustache stained yellow at the corners. His eyes were the color of cold water. He wore his cut buttoned to the top. He had not buttoned it like that in 3 weeks. He had buttoned it this morning when the call came in from one of his road captains, the one who had been parked at the end of Maple Street, telling him that the boy he had been tracking for 48 hours had just been visited by Beauregard Whitlock himself. He had 2 banditos standing at the door behind him. Big men, older, quiet. The kind of men who had been in clubs long enough to stand still for 2 hours without their hands shifting on their belts. Bo had Cyrus on the porch of Toby's house and one other man at the counter pretending to read a newspaper. A quiet older angel named Albie. Albie had a paperback novel folded into the pages of his newspaper. He was reading the novel and watching the room over the top of it. He had been doing this kind of work for Bo since 1979. The dance was being danced. Everyone knew the steps. Dutch did not look at Bo first. He looked at Toby. "You are the boy." Toby could not get his voice to come out at first. He nodded. Dutch slid a photograph across the table, just a still from the church security camera. Black and white, grainy. A kid in a hoodie kneeling beside a beautiful black motorcycle working a wrench. "That you," he said. "Yes, sir." "You knew it was not yours." "Yes, sir." "You took it anyway." "Yes, sir." Dutch's jaw flexed. His big hand wrapped around the coffee cup Lurleen had set in front of him. He did not drink from it. Bo spoke then. Calm, even. Dutch, before you make a decision tonight, I need you to hear this boy out. Just once. Then you do whatever you think is right. But you do it knowing what I know. Dutch's eyes flicked to Bo. There was no friendship in them. There was 40 years of restraint, which was a different thing. There was history between these two men that neither of them had ever spoken about. There had been a night in Knoxville in 1984 when Bo Whitlock had pulled Dutch Holloway out of a burning truck with a broken collarbone and dragged him across a parking lot before the fuel tank went up. There had been a night in Memphis in 1991 when Dutch Holloway had stood between Bo Whitlock and 3 federal agents and told them they were going to need a warrant. There had been 27 years between those 2 nights, and most of those years had been spent on opposite sides of state lines, in opposite colors with opposite men around them. But there had been those 2 nights, and the 2 of them had never spoken of either one. They did not need to. The Knights sat in the booth with them now, the way old debts always do. You ride into my county at 5 in the morning with a kid you barely know, Dutch said. So I will hear him. Once. But Beauregard, hear me. Helen's engine is not metal. You understand that? I understand it, Bo said. Better than you think. Then we are clear. Bo looked at Toby. Tell him, son. Same as you told me. Everything. Do not leave anything out. Toby told it again, slower this time. His voice was steadier now. Whatever had broken on the porch had set the way a bone sets. He told Dutch about the man in the cap, about the cap pulled low so the security cameras could not catch his face, about the worn Bandito's cut, about the way he had known to use the words bad heart and Vanderbilt and 1.2 million, about the way he had said Hell's Angels into the air, as if he were planting a seed. Dutch's face did not move while Toby talked, but his coffee cup did, very slowly. His hand was tightening around it, knuckles going white. By the time Toby was finished, the cup was trembling and the coffee was rippling in small concentric rings, and Dutch was breathing through his nose like a man trying to keep something inside his chest from getting out. He set the cup down, very carefully, as if afraid it might shatter. He looked at Bo. You believe him. Every word Bo said. You believe one of mine did this. I believe one of yours did this. Long silence. The smell of coffee. The hiss of the griddle. Lurleen behind the counter not making a single unnecessary sound. Albie at the counter slowly turning a page of his newspaper. The 2 banditos at the door not breathing any louder than they had been. Dutch turned back to Toby. And for one long second, Toby saw the entire grief of a 67-year-old man pass across his face like weather. The kind of grief that does not heal. The kind a wife leaves you with when she dies in a hospice bed in Memphis after 20 months you did not get back. Tell me about your grandmother, Dutch said. Toby blinked. The question caught him off guard. Sir, your grandmother, the one with the heart. Tell me about her. Toby swallowed. She raised me, he said, since I was 8. She worked at the textile plant out by Cookville for 31 years. She raised 3 other kids before me, 2 of her own. One was my mother. The other was my uncle. They both died young. She used to make biscuits every Sunday. She does not anymore. Her hands shake too much. Dutch nodded once, slow. And the man who told you about her, the one in the cap, he knew about her. Yes, sir. He used her like she was bait. Dutch looked down at his coffee. He did not pick the cup up again. Where is the engine? He said softly. I do not know, sir, Toby said. I gave it to him in a storage unit, past the county line, Unit 119. He told me to forget the address. I have not been back, I swear. Dutch nodded once. Slow. $6,000, he said. What? Toby said. That is what this kid owes me, Dutch said, looking at Bo. Double what your boy was paid. And 6 months of work, no pay at my legitimate shop off Highway 41. He shows up every Saturday. He fixes whatever I tell him to fix. He learns what it costs to put hands on something that does not belong to him. If at the end of 6 months, he has not run and he has not stolen and he has not lied to me one single time, the debt is closed. The boy walks out clean. We do not speak of it again. Bo nodded. That is fair. Dutch held up one finger. But Beauregard, hear me. If your boy puts a hand on one bolt that does not belong to him for the rest of his life, if he so much as picks up a wrench in a dark parking lot, he will not have a second conversation with me. You understand? I understand, Bo said. Dutch turned to Toby. You understand? Yes, sir. Then look at me, boy. Toby looked at him. Dutch's voice dropped, almost gentle. That engine was my wife's hands, he said. She etched that skull herself. She put 8 months of cancer treatment between every line of that work. That bike was the last thing she gave me on this earth. So when I tell you that you are walking out of here tonight because Beauregard Whitlock vouched for you, I want you to understand exactly what kind of mercy that is. Do you? Yes, sir. Dutch looked at him a long moment, then nodded. Once. Now get him out of my sight, Beauregard. He is making the inside of my chest hurt. They walked out of Lurlene's at 5:30 in the morning. The sky was just starting to soften to a pale gray at the edges. The diner sign was still buzzing. The world had not yet woken up. Lurleen never said a word. But as Toby passed the counter, she pushed a small white paper bag across to him without looking up. Eat that, baby, she said quietly. Drive safe. He opened the bag in the Cavalier, a grilled cheese wrapped in foil, 2 pickles, a folded paper napkin. He sat in the parking lot and ate the whole sandwich in 5 bites, and did not realize he was crying again until the bread was gone. From that morning on, Lurleen Boone sent a hot plate to the gas station for him every single night of his shift, wrapped in foil. She told the busboy to tell him it was leftovers they were just going to throw out. They were not leftovers. They were never leftovers. That is how kindness moves in a small town, sideways, quietly. So you do not have to feel ashamed of needing it. The next afternoon, Cyrus Pruitt walked into the Fuel and Go and set both elbows on the counter and looked at Toby Vance the way a vice president of a motorcycle club looks at a problem he has been asked to solve. Bo wants you at the property, he said. Saturday morning, 8 sharp. You eat breakfast there. He needs to talk to you about something that is going to change how the rest of your life looks. So eat light tonight. He is going to feed you eggs. Cyrus paused, then added in a slightly softer voice also. He likes you, kid. I have known that man 41 years. He likes you. Just thought you should know. Then he turned around and walked out. Toby stood behind the register and stared at the front door of the gas station for a full minute without moving. Saturday morning, 8 sharp. Toby drove the Cavalier up a long gravel driveway lined with white oaks just outside the little town of Harland, 40 miles from Redville. At the end of the drive, the property opened up in front of him like a different world. A sprawling ranch house with a stone chimney. A red barn set back against the tree line. An open-air pavilion with rows of motorcycles parked in neat formation. And behind the house, visible through a wide set of bay doors, a full professional mechanics workshop, 2 hydraulic lifts, a welding station with a ventilation hood, diagnostic equipment mounted on rolling carts, tool walls organized by size and color, an air compressor the size of a refrigerator humming softly in the corner. Toby parked, stepped out, stood there for a moment. He had never in his life seen a workshop like that. Bo was waiting on the porch in a folding chair, coffee mug in one hand. He waved Toby up. "Sit down, son." Toby sat. Bo did not start with business. He started with eggs. He cooked them himself on a small electric griddle out on the porch. 3 eggs scrambled with sharp cheddar, 2 pieces of buttered toast, black coffee. Toby ate every bite. He had not eaten anything that warm in a long time. When the plates were empty, Bo set his coffee down. 3 things, he said. "I'm going to tell you 3 things, and I want you to listen to all 3 before you say one word. Can you do that?" "Yes, sir." "First thing, I had Cyrus look into you. I know about your grandmother. I know about the heart. I know about Vanderbilt. I know the number. 1.2 million. Toby's jaw tightened. "I'm going to put my hand on a phone," Bo said. "Today, before lunch. And I am going to put your grandmother on the priority list at Vanderbilt Heart Institute through the Hells Angels Community Fund. The fund pays. The fund has paid for things like this before. You do not owe me a single dollar. You do not even owe me a thank you. Your grandmother does not have to know where the money came from. She gets to keep her dignity. She gets to keep her years. That is the first thing. Do not speak yet." Toby's eyes were wet. He did not speak. "Second thing," Bo said, "I own a commercial lot in Redville, corner of Maple and 4th. Toby stopped breathing. "I have owned it for 19 years. I was going to sell it. I am not anymore. I am going to lease it to you. $1 a year. And the community fund is going to pay for the full build-out. Hydraulic lifts, tool walls, electrical signage licensing. Everything you need to open a real garage. Real one. Not a backyard dream. Not a crayon drawing on a refrigerator. A real shop, son. With your name on the sign." Toby's hands were clamped to the edge of the porch railing now. He was not breathing right. Bo let that sit there a long moment. "Third thing." His voice changed. It got rougher, quieter, like the words were coming from somewhere deeper than he usually let people see. "You do not just run that garage as a business, son. There is a condition. You take in kids. Kids from this town. Kids from up the road. Kids without people. Kids the way you were. You train them. You teach them how to put their hands on an engine and earn a living that nobody can ever take away from them. That is the condition." He looked at Toby. "A man named Otis Freeman did that for me when I was 16 years old. He pulled me out of an alley behind a welding shop in Nashville in 1962. I had not eaten in 3 days. I had not slept under a roof in 2 weeks. He put a torch in my hand. He said, 'Hands that know how to work never have to beg.' I never forgot it." He paused. "I never paid it back, son. Not the way I should have. Not while Otis was still alive to see it." He looked at Toby. His eyes were tired in a way Toby had not seen before. "This is how I pay it back." Toby could not hold it anymore. He pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes. His shoulders shook. Once, then again. Bo did not move, did not say a word, did not reach over, just sat there, drank his coffee, let the boy have his moment. When Toby could speak again, he wiped his face on his sleeve, looked up, looked at this enormous old man with the silver beard, and asked the only question he had left. Why me? Bo studied him for a long moment. Because you remind me of him, he said simply. Not how you look, how you move, how you help without being asked, how you leave without asking for anything. Otis did that for me when I had nothing. You did it for me on Route 12. He paused. Now it is my turn. That afternoon, a sound began to roll up the gravel driveway. One motorcycle, then two, then five, then a low thunder that did not stop. Hell's Angels from all over the South. Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama, Georgia. 200 bikes, 200 men. They lined the front yard in long, neat rows and killed their engines and pulled their helmets off and stood waiting. Cyrus Pruitt walked out in front of them, big man in a black t-shirt. He turned and faced the crowd. He raised his voice just enough for it to reach the back row. Starting next Saturday and every Saturday after that until it is finished, he said, we build. Vance Auto opens before the first frost. Hands up if you are in. 200 hands went up at once. The yard erupted. Boots on gravel. Engines starting back up. Men yelling out which trade they could bring. Welders, electricians, concrete guys, a retired plumber, 2 former contractors. The noise rolled across the field like a slow weather front. Cyrus walked back to his truck, lowered the tailgate, pulled out a rolling tool cabinet, stainless steel, professional grade. He rolled it across the gravel and stopped in front of Toby. On the side panel engraved in clean block letters, T. Vance. From the club, Cyrus said, welcome to the family, kid. Toby put both hands on the cabinet. He could not look up. 200 men stood in that yard. Nobody laughed at him. Nobody looked away. Nobody told him to pull it together. They let him have it. On the porch, Bo pressed a hand briefly to his chest. Out of old habit, Cyrus saw it and did not say a thing. Over the next 6 months, the corner of Maple and 4th changed in ways the people of Redville talked about for years afterward. The first Saturday, the weeds got cleared. 20 Hells Angels with weed whackers and chainsaws turned a half-acre of overgrowth into bare red clay in 4 hours. A man named Big Joe Whitfield, 61, 6'6", 300 pounds, drove 400 miles from Mobile, Alabama, to operate the small bobcat that was going to push the dirt around. Big Joe did not say much. He had said one thing to Cyrus when he arrived, which was, Bo saved my brother in 1989 I.O. And then he had not said anything else for the rest of the day. He worked until the sun went down. He slept in his cab that night. He drove home Sunday afternoon. He came back the next Saturday. He came back every Saturday until the building had a roof on it. The second Saturday, the concrete got poured. 3 Hells Angels who had been working concrete since the 80s laid out the slab with chalk lines and rebar. They told Toby to stand in the middle of it before the concrete came. They handed him a brick. He looked at them. The oldest one, a man named Hector Reyes from outside El Paso, with arms covered in green tattoo work that had faded into the color of old copper, said, you put your name in the corner, son, right there. So everybody who walks through this door for the rest of your life knows whose hands built this floor. Toby pressed the brick into the wet concrete. T. Vance, October. Then Hector pressed his own initials in next to it. So did the other two men. So did Cyrus. So did Bo. By the time the slab cured, there were 47 sets of initials around the perimeter of the floor. None of them charged Toby $1 for the concrete. The third Saturday, the framing went up. Hell's Angels with welding torches cut steel for the support beams. A retired iron worker from Knoxville named Lonnie supervised. He had run a crew on the federal courthouse renovation in Memphis in 1997. He moved slower now. His knees were bad. But his eye was still good. He stood in the middle of the slab with a coffee in one hand and called out instructions, and the younger men jumped to do whatever he said. There was an order to it. A kind of unspoken military rhythm. Toby watched it and understood for the first time that these men had spent their entire adult lives building things and tearing things down together in ways most people never saw. The fourth Saturday, the electrical started. The local electrician, a retired man named Glenn Cofield, 71 years old, came by with his own truck full of wire and conduit. Glenn had been a journeyman electrician in Nashville for 44 years before he retired. He had wired studios on Music Row. He had wired the back rooms of bars that did not technically exist on paper. He did not say much. He did not need to. He looked at the blueprints Cyrus laid out on a folding table, made 3 small marks in pencil, and started pulling wire. He worked beside Toby for 6 straight Saturdays. He taught Toby how to read a 3-phase panel. He taught Toby how to ground a lift. He taught Toby that the difference between a good shop and a great shop was the way the wire was run inside the walls where nobody was ever going to see it. "You build for the man who is going to walk in here in 20 years, Glenn said. Not for the man who is going to walk in here next week. You build for the man who is going to inherit this from you. That is who you build for, son." Toby did not understand all of what Glenn was saying yet. He would eventually. The ladies from Pastor Crawford's church on Cedar Street brought lunch every Saturday in foil trays. Fried chicken, greens, cornbread, sweet tea by the gallon. The lead organizer was a woman named Mrs. Beulah Pemberton, 78 years old, 2 replaced knees. She drove herself to Maple and Fourth every Saturday morning in a 1994 Crown Victoria she had owned since she had been a school principal in Cookville. The trunk of the Crown Victoria was full of glass dishes. She did not ask anybody to help her unload them. She did not need to. By the second Saturday, 3 Hells Angels were waiting on the curb at 11:30 to unload Mrs. Pemberton's car before she could open the trunk herself. Mrs. Pemberton brought a pot of pinto beans every Saturday. Her late husband, who had been killed in a bike accident on Route 41 in 1992, had been a biker himself. A man named Curtis Pemberton. He had ridden with the Banditos in his younger days. Then he had ridden alone for a long time. Then he had ridden with whoever would have him, which by the end of his life had been a small chapter of Iron Brotherhood out of Smyrna. Mrs. Pemberton did not have a side in this thing. She had only ever had a husband. She made her husband's pinto beans every Saturday because she said quietly to Toby one afternoon while he was eating, standing up beside the truck, "Those beans were the only thing Curtis ever asked for when he came home tired. And if these boys are going home tired tonight, they ought to have what my husband had." A Hells Angel named Buck Whitaker hand-painted the sign. Buck was 57 years old. He had been a commercial sign painter for 30 years before a stroke had taken some of the use of his right hand. He could not paint commercially anymore, but he could still paint slow. He took 6 Saturdays to letter the sign. Bold black letters on white. Vance Auto, Redville, Tennessee. He climbed the ladder by himself. Cyrus stood at the base of the ladder for every minute he was up there, just in case. Buck did not know, or maybe he did. Lorleen Boone sent a cooler full of cold sandwiches every weekend without ever sending a bill. By the 5th week, she was also sending an entire pan of peach cobbler. By the 7th week, the cobbler had become a sheet cake, and the sheet cake had a single candle in the middle of it, because that Saturday was Toby's 18th birthday. And Lurleen had remembered, and Cyrus had reminded her. And Bo had quietly asked her if she wanted to bring it. She did. 200 Hells Angels sang to Toby Vance on the cracked concrete of his half-built garage on a Saturday afternoon in October. He blew out the candle. He did not make a wish. He did not need to. A retired plumber named Earl Tinney, 68 years old, originally from western Kentucky, installed the lift drain lines for free. He drove 80 miles each way every Saturday for 2 months. His wife had passed the year before. He told Bo quietly that he needed something to do on Saturdays now. Bo had nodded once. Welcome aboard, brother. Earl did not ride a bike. He drove a 1988 Ford pickup. He did not consider himself part of the club. He considered himself part of whatever this was which he could not quite name. He just knew it felt like the closest thing to a Saturday morning church service he had been to since his wife had stopped going. An old woman named Eulalie Vance, no relation to Toby, came up the driveway on the 8th Saturday with a wicker basket. She was 81. She had heard about the boy from a friend who had heard about the boy from a friend. She walked up to him slowly on the front sidewalk, with the basket held out in both hands. Inside the basket was a navy blue knit scarf, cable pattern, hand done. It looked like something a person had spent 3 weeks of evenings on. For your neck this winter, she said. I made it the right length so it does not get caught in a wheel. You wrap it twice and tuck the ends inside your coat. You hear me, son? Yes, ma'am. She patted his cheek. She walked back to her car. She drove away. Toby wore that scarf every winter morning of his life from that point forward. The build-out took 6 months. Hell's Angels, who had not held a hammer in a decade, came back stiff and grinning every Saturday night. Toby was there every Saturday without exception. Never late, never sitting. He worked alongside men twice his age and 3 times his size. Not one of them treated him like a boy. They treated him like the owner, because he was. By the end of the 2nd month, every Hell's Angel who had worked on the build-out had signed his name on the inside wall of what was going to become the office. They wrote with a black Sharpie. Some of them wrote their road names. Some of them wrote their given names. Some of them wrote their service numbers from Vietnam or Iraq. Buck Whitaker wrote his name with his left hand because his right hand could no longer hold a marker steady. Big Joe Whitfield wrote his brother's name underneath his own. The brother Bo had saved in 1989. Hector Reyes wrote his initials and the year. Lonnie wrote nothing at all, just drew a small wrench. By the time the office was finished, there were 203 signatures on that wall. Toby covered them with a sheet of clear lacquer the week before opening day. He never painted over them. They are still there. On weekdays after school, Toby drove 41 miles to Dutch Holloway's legitimate shop. He swept the floors. He changed oil. He pulled transmissions for senior mechanics who barely spoke to him. Dutch never came out into the shop. But every Saturday morning before Toby left for Maple and 4th, an envelope was waiting on the bench where he hung his apron. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Hours worked. Hours remaining. Dutch's signature at the bottom in dark blue ink. Nothing else. His first week at Dutch's shop, nobody spoke to him. Nobody. He clocked in at 3:30 in the afternoon. He clocked out at 9:30 at night. 6 hours. He swept. He emptied trash. He carried tires. He restocked the parts shelves. Not a single mechanic in the 4 bays of that shop said a word to him in 5 days. Not good morning, not pass the ratchet, not goodbye. They looked through him. He understood. He had stolen from their president's dead wife. He had cost their club a year of peace. He had no right to be standing in their shop, and they all knew it. He kept his head down. He did the work. On the 6th day, a bandito named Walt Crowder finally said something. Walt was 60 years old. He had been with the banditos since he was 24. He had a leather face and gray eyes and forearms that looked like rope. He walked past Toby in the bay carrying a coffee. He set the coffee on the workbench in front of Toby without slowing down. He did not look at the boy. "Welcome to purgatory, kid," he said, and kept walking. That was the first kindness Toby received in that shop. He drank the coffee black. It was burned. He drank it anyway. By the 2nd month, the other mechanics had started saying his name. By the 3rd month, Walt was leaving a coffee on the bench every afternoon. By the 4th month, an old bandito named Roscoe, who had been with the club since 1979, came over while Toby was rebuilding the lower end of a 1947 knucklehead and watched him work for 10 minutes without speaking, and then said, "You have good hands, boy." Bad heart, probably, but good hands. He walked away. Toby did not know whether the bad heart was a joke or whether the old man meant it. He never asked. Dutch Holloway himself, Toby saw 3 times in 6 months. The first time was the morning he started when Dutch passed through the front office to drop off paperwork. He looked at Toby once. He did not nod. The second time was the morning of Toby's 4th month when Toby was carrying a transmission across the bay, and Dutch was walking the other direction with a coffee. Dutch stepped out of his way, did not stop, did not speak. The 3rd time was on a Tuesday afternoon in the 5th month. Toby had been told to clean Dutch's private office because the regular cleaner was out sick. Toby went in with a broom and a dust rag. The office was small. A desk, a leather chair, a row of framed black and white photographs on the wall. Photographs of bikes. Photographs of men Toby did not know. And one photograph in a heavy silver frame on the corner of the desk of a woman. She was maybe 40 in the photograph. Light hair, strong jaw, a wide, easy smile that you could feel through the glass. She was sitting on a porch with a coffee in her hand and laughing at something just outside the frame. Toby looked at her for a long time. He did not need to be told who she was. He cleaned the office. He did not touch the photograph. He left the broom in the corner where Walt had told him to leave it. He walked out. That evening, while he was tying on his apron at the bench, the door of Dutch's office opened. Dutch stepped out. He looked at Toby across the bay. He looked for maybe 4 full seconds. He did not say anything. Then he closed the door and went back inside. The next morning, when Toby came in for his Saturday hours, there was a coffee already waiting on the bench. Black. Burned. Sitting in the same spot Walt always left one. But Walt was not there yet. Walt did not come in until 10 on Saturdays. Toby drank the coffee. He did not ask who had left it. Nobody told him. While Toby was working at Dutch's shop, the man in the cap had not been idle. He had watched for 2 months from a distance while Bo took the boy under his wing. He had hoped Dutch would change his mind. Dutch did not. He had hoped the brothers in his own club would whisper. They did not whisper because Dutch had not told anyone anything. The man in the cap began to panic. He needed somebody to die. He needed the war he had been promised. So one night in the 4th month of the build-out, he broke into the cargo bay of a long haul truck, parked outside the bandito's legitimate shop, and stole one of Dutch's own crates. Inside the crate was a row of Crown's custom-milled gas tank emblems, Helen's last design before the cancer had finished her. He took them across state lines and dumped them in the back parking lot of the Hells Angels chapter house in Knoxville, where Bo's brothers were sure to find them, where Bo would be expected to explain how Bandito's property had ended up in his clubhouse parking lot. He had not counted on the security camera in the alley. He had not counted on Cyrus Pruitt being the kind of man who reviewed every camera every morning. He had not counted on Cyrus recognizing his own walk in the grainy black and white footage. The man's left foot turned slightly outward when he stepped. Cyrus had been watching that walk at 3 in the morning for over a decade in the parking lots of Bandito legitimate shops. He knew exactly who he was looking at. Cyrus took the tape to Bo on a Tuesday. Bo took the tape to Dutch on a Wednesday. Dutch watched the tape twice in his back office with the door closed and the blinds drawn. When the tape was finished, he sat for a long time with his hands flat on his desk. Then he stood up. Then he opened the desk drawer and took out his cut. He had not worn the cut in 3 weeks because it had hurt to wear anything Helen had touched. He put it on now. He buttoned it up to the top button. He called a meeting. 3 days later, on the last Saturday of the 6th month, the meeting happened. Toby did not know about the meeting. Bo did not tell him. Dutch did not tell him. Cyrus did not tell him. What happened at that meeting was Bandito business, and it stayed Bandito business. A senior member with a faded cut and a habit of keeping his cap low did not leave that meeting. No funeral, no marker, no story. Just a name nobody said out loud anymore. The night the meeting ended, Dutch sent Bo a single bottle of bourbon, 30 years old. A note tied to the neck with twine. 5 words. The war is over, brother. Bo put the bottle on a shelf in his study. He never opened it. He told Cyrus, "When I go, you give that bottle to the boy." He did not have to say which boy. That same Saturday, on the last day of his 6 months at Dutch's legitimate shop, Toby found a different envelope on the workbench where he hung his apron. Inside the envelope was a single piece of paper. 3 words on it in Dutch's handwriting. "We are done." And underneath those 3 words, taped to the page, was a small brass key. To what Toby did not know. He pocketed it, drove home, put the key in the shoebox under his bed where the $43 used to be. He still does not know what it opens. Maybe one day he will. Walt Crowder was waiting at the door of the shop as Toby walked out for the last time. Walt was not in his cut. He was in a flannel shirt and a baseball cap. He looked older without the leather on. He held out one hand. "You did not run," Walt said. "I had money on you running in the 3rd month. I am glad I lost it." He shook Toby's hand. He held it a beat longer than he needed to. He let it go. "He does not like you, kid," Walt said quietly, "but he respects you. That is rarer. You hold on to that." Then Walt put his hands in his pockets and walked back inside the shop. Toby never saw him again. He heard from Cyrus years later that Walt had passed in 2019 of a heart attack, working on a tractor in his own driveway. Cyrus had gone to the funeral. He had stood at the back of the chapel in his cut. 3 banditos had come up to him and shaken his hand without speaking. And then he had gotten back on his bike and ridden home. That is how respect works in that world. Sideways. Quietly. Without making anybody feel small. Bo came to the build-out every Saturday, too. He did not lift anything. Cyrus did not let him. He sat in a folding chair near the back of the lot and watched. Some Saturdays he looked strong. Some Saturdays he looked grayer than the Saturday before. One afternoon, Toby came up to him with a thermos of coffee, and Bo was sitting very still. one hand pressed flat against his chest, eyes closed. "You all right, sir?" Toby asked. Bo opened one eye. "I am fine, kid. Worry about your torque specs." Toby let it go, but he did not stop watching. Nana Odessa got her heart in late March. Vanderbilt Heart Institute. The surgery took 11 hours. She came through it. The doctor was very careful with his words afterward, cautiously optimistic. Recovery would be long. There would be drugs. There would be follow-ups. But she had a chance, a real one. Toby slept in the chair next to her hospital bed for 3 nights. On the 4th morning, she opened her good eye and looked at him and said, "Baby, you look like a man who has not eaten a hot meal since I came in here. Go down to that cafeteria and get yourself something. Do not argue with your grandmother on the day she wakes up." He laughed. For the first time in months, he laughed. He kissed her forehead. He went down to the cafeteria. He ate a hot meal. He never told her where the money came from. She never asked. She had her own ideas. She kept them to herself. That is how love worked in that family. Sideways. Without questions. Without making anybody feel small. Vance. Otto opened on a cold Saturday morning in early November. The sign above the bay doors was the one Buck Whitaker had painted by hand. Bold black letters on white. Vance Auto. Redville, Tennessee. There were 300 people on the sidewalk when Cyrus cut the ribbon with a pair of bolt cutters, because nobody had remembered to bring scissors. There were 212 motorcycles parked in formation up and down Maple Street. There was a barbecue going in the back lot, run by 3 Hells Angels from Atlanta who would not let anybody else touch the smoker. There was Mrs. Pemberton with a fresh pot of pinto beans on the folding table. There was Lurleen Boone with a sheet cake that read, "Good hands, good heart, good man." There was Eulalie Vance with another knit scarf, this one for Booker Greaves, who would not arrive in Toby's life for another 4 months, but whose neck she had heard about somehow already. First paying customer was Lurleen herself. She pulled in with her diner van and a check engine light that had been glowing for 8 months. Toby fixed it in 45 minutes. She paid full price. He tried to give her a discount. She shut that down immediately. "You are a business now, sweetheart," she said. "Act like it." Local news covered the opening. A Nashville crew filmed the shop. The sign. The boy in the work shirt. The headline ran the next morning. 200 bikers helped a 17-year-old open a dream garage. The reporter, a young woman named Cassandra Mills, asked Toby at the end of the interview why he had wanted to be a mechanic. Toby thought about it for a long moment. Then he said very quietly, "My father wanted it for me, ma'am." He paused. "I think he did anyway. I do not remember him very well." The reporter did not ask a follow-up. The camera kept rolling. Toby looked off camera. The footage made it into the local news package, but the line about the father got cut for time. The full footage sat in an archive at the Nashville station for years. Nobody ever pulled it back out. The story went regional, then national. Toby's face was everywhere for 1 week. A quiet kid from Redville standing in front of a real shop, surrounded by people who had decided he was worth believing in. Within 3 months, Vance Auto was fully booked. Toby worked after school and weekends. He hired his first employee, Booker Greaves, 16 years old, 2 unexcused absences from expulsion. Nowhere to go after the final bell. Booker came in for an interview with a black eye and a cut on his lip. He did not explain either. Toby did not ask. Toby handed him a coffee and a navy blue work shirt with the Vance Auto patch already stitched on. Booker put the shirt on right there in the front office over the t-shirt he had walked in wearing. He did not take the shirt off for 3 years. Toby taught Booker the way he had taught himself. Patient. One system at a time. Manual in one hand, wrench in the other. The first morning, Booker held a torque wrench. Toby reached around him and laid his own hand over the boy's hand to show him how to feel for the click. Toby did not know at the time that the hand he was laying over Booker's was the exact same way Solomon Vance had once laid his hand over a 6-year-old Toby's hand at a kitchen table in another life. He did not remember it. He just did it. Some things move through families even when the memory of the family does not. Bo's community fund made the apprenticeship official. 4 slots a year. Full stipend. Tools provided. Applications came in from 3 counties. 2 months before he died, Bo came to the shop unannounced. It was a Wednesday afternoon. Toby was teaching Booker how to seat a head gasket on a small block Chevy. Booker was 16. He had 3 weeks of experience. He was getting it wrong in the same patient, steady way Toby had once gotten it wrong, which was to say he was learning. Toby's hand was over the boy's hand. Toby was saying, "Feel the click, son. Do not look for it, feel it." Booker was nodding. The bell over the front door rang. Bo walked in, alone. No Cyrus, no escort. He was wearing his cut but unbuttoned, and underneath he was wearing the kind of flannel shirt an old man wears when he is no longer expecting anybody to see him in it. He looked thinner than the last time Toby had seen him, which had been 4 weeks earlier, at the Harlan property. His face had a color to it that Toby's grandmother had had the year before her heart had been bad enough for the doctor to use the word transplant. Toby straightened up. "Bo," he said. "Do not stop teaching him, son," Bo said. "I came to watch you teach, not to interrupt." He sat down on the bench against the wall. The bench Cyrus had built for him out of an old pew from a closed church outside Cookville. Bo took a small leather-bound notebook out of his vest pocket. He opened it on his knee. He took out a pen. He watched Toby teach Booker for 40 minutes. He did not say anything. He wrote a single line into the notebook, then closed it. When Toby looked up, Booker had finished the head gasket. Bo was standing. "Walk me to the door, son." Toby walked him to the door. Bo stopped on the sidewalk by his bike. He stood there a long moment, looking at the sign above the bay. Vance Auto, Redville, Tennessee. Buck Whitaker's hand lettering. The November sun on the white paint. Otis would have liked this shop, Bo said quietly. He would have liked it a lot. He turned to Toby. He put one big, rough hand on the side of Toby's neck. Father style. Old country style. The way a man touches a son when he is about to say something he does not have the words for. "I am proud of you," Bo said. "I have been proud of you since the second tube held in the rain, just so you know." He kicked the shovel head to life. He pulled out into Maple Street. That was the last time Toby Vance saw Bo Whitlock alive. Bo Whitlock died 8 months and 12 days after the morning he met Toby Vance on Route 12. He died on his own porch, in his folding chair, facing the hills. The almost empty bottle of bourbon Dutch had sent him was on the railing. The amber prescription bottle next to it. A coffee cup half full and gone cold on the floor by his boot. Cyrus, looking at the scene later, would say there was nothing the doctors could have done. The truth was nobody had asked the doctors. Bo had stopped asking the doctors a long time ago. His heart had been tired for over a year. His shoulder had never come back from the night he had been thrown from a bike in Birmingham at the age of 62, trying to break up a fight that was not his to break up. Cyrus would always blame himself a little for that morning. He should not have. Bo had been ready for a long time. He had just needed to know the boy was safe first. Cyrus had been the one to find him. Cyrus had come up the gravel driveway at 6:15 in the morning to drop off a part Bo had asked him to pick up from a shop in Cookville. He had walked up onto the porch. He had said, "Brother," and then said it again. And then he had set the part down very gently on the porch boards and put his hand on Bo's shoulder. And he had stood there for a long time in the gray morning light. And he had not cried because Cyrus Pruitt was a man who had been raised in a place where men did not cry. But his hand had stayed on his brother's shoulder for 10 minutes before he had finally been able to make himself reach into his vest for his phone. Cyrus called Toby at 5:47 that morning. He had waited until the sun came up before he could make the call. He had sat with his brother an extra hour in the dim light because he did not want to be the man who took the news to the boy any earlier than the boy needed to hear it. Toby was already up. The garage opened at 7. He picked up on the second ring. "It's Cyrus," the voice said, careful and low. "Son, he is gone." Toby did not say anything. He stood in the small kitchen on Maple Street, the crayon drawing on the refrigerator, the hum of the new refrigerator which Bo had quietly replaced 2 months earlier without telling anyone, the sound of a bird outside, the sound of nothing. He drove to the shop. He did not open the bay doors. He sat in the middle of the concrete floor, alone. On the slab his name was in the corner of. 47 sets of initials around the perimeter. He sat there for an hour. He did not cry then either. Some kinds of grief do not have crying in them. They have a quiet so deep it goes under all the words. The funeral procession stretched for over a mile down Route 12. 600 motorcycles. Hell's Angels from every chapter in 4 states. Members from Kentucky who had flown into Knoxville the night before because their bikes were in the shop. Members from Georgia who had ridden through a thunderstorm in the dark to make it on time. Toby rode at the front. Bo's old shovelhead. The 1972 with the patched tire from Route 12. The same machine where it had all started. He had not even known the bike was his until Cyrus had handed him the title that morning along with a set of keys along with an envelope. The envelope was sealed. Addressed in Bo's handwriting. "Do not open this for 12 years," the front of the envelope said. "You will know when." Toby put it in the safe in his office that night. He did not open it. The service was at a small Baptist cemetery outside Harland. A minister Bo had known for 30 years said the words. 600 men in cuts stood with their helmets in their hands. Cyrus Pruitt gave the eulogy. He was 64 years old and he had buried more brothers than he could count, but he had never buried Bo. And his voice broke twice. He talked about Otis Freeman. He talked about the alley in Nashville in 1962. He talked about a young boy with a torch in his hand and a sentence in his ear. Hands that know how to work, never have to beg. He talked about how Bo had spent 52 years trying to pay that sentence back. He looked at Toby once in the front row when he said the word back. He did not have to say anything else. Every man at that funeral knew exactly what Cyrus meant. When the minister was done, Toby was asked if he wanted to say anything. He had not planned to. He had been told he did not have to. He walked up to the grave anyway. He stood there for a long moment with his hands in the pockets of his coat. The November wind was sharp. He could feel Eulalie Vance's scarf around his neck. He cleared his throat. "He found me on Route 12, Toby said. His voice was steady. "He gave me a name. I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to deserve it." He stepped back from the grave. The 600 men around him were quiet. One of them, an old angel from Birmingham, raised one fist to his chest. Then another did. Then another. By the time Toby was back in the front row, 600 fists were against 600 chests. Nobody said a word. Then a sound came down the road from the south. Engines, many of them, slow, heavy. Coming up the hill toward the cemetery, heads turned. 80 bandidos pulled up at the gate of the cemetery. 80. They did not come through the gate. They parked along the fence line, their engines still running, and they killed them one by one in a long, slow, rolling silence, like a flag being lowered. Dutch Holloway got off the lead bike. He was alone. He walked through the gate in his full cut buttoned all the way to the top, in a way no bandito in the South had been seen wearing his cut at a Hells Angels event in living memory. He walked past the line of Hells Angels. None of them moved. He walked up to the casket. He took something out of his vest. A bottle, 30-year-old bourbon, sealed, unopened. He set it on top of the casket. He stood there a moment with his hand on the wood. Then he stepped back, found Toby in the crowd, looked at him for a long beat. He did not say anything. He nodded once. He turned around and walked back out the gate. The bandidos kicked their engines back to life behind him. They rolled away south down Route 12. They did not look back. It was the last time Dutch Holloway would ever cross into Hells Angels territory in his life. He died of a stroke 14 months later in his own bed, with a framed photograph of Helen on the nightstand beside him. Cyrus walked up to Toby after the procession had passed. He put his hand on Toby's shoulder. He looked at the bottle on the casket, then at the road, then at Toby. That was the closest thing to a peace treaty this country has seen in 30 years, son. He said it quietly. You did that. Whether you know it or not, you did that. Toby looked at the bottle. The bottle was the same kind Bo had kept on the shelf in his study. Never opened. Waiting. Cyrus had told Toby that morning when he handed him the title to the shovelhead that Bo had wanted Toby to have his bourbon when the day came. The day had come. Cyrus had brought the bottle from Bo's study to the funeral in a brown paper sack. It was already in Toby's saddlebag. He had not known it. Dutch had brought another one. 2 bottles. Same vintage. Same year. The year Bo had founded the Tennessee chapter of the Hells Angels. 1979. Cyrus put his hand on Toby's shoulder one more time. He waited for the world to break, son, Cyrus said. He waited a long time. Then it broke for you on Route 12 and he came running. Do you know what that means? Toby shook his head. It means you were his last good thing, son. It means he got to go knowing he had one left. The procession back to the property in Harland was the longest, slowest ride Toby had ever made. 600 bikes. Route 12, the wind through the pines, the shovelhead under him with the patch tube still in the rear wheel. He could feel the bike the way you can feel a heart you have known your whole life. He could feel Bo in every inch of the frame. He could feel his own hands on the bars in a way that did not feel like his own hands at all. At the property, the men ate. They drank. They told stories about Bo. About things he had done in 1968. About things he had done in 1989. About a night in Mobile when he had carried a brother out of a barn fire on his back. About a morning in Knoxville when he had cried at the funeral of a 15-year-old boy he had only met once. Cyrus took Toby into Bo's workshop, the big workshop. 2 hydraulic lifts, the welding station, the tool walls. Cyrus walked him slowly through every corner of it. He showed him Bo's locker. He showed him Marlene's old helmet on a peg above the bench. He showed him a small wooden box on a shelf unlabeled that Cyrus did not open. "It is yours when you are ready," son Cyrus said. "Not today." He showed Toby a key. Brass. Heavy. Old. "Bo wanted you to have this property when I am gone," Cyrus said. "The land, the house, the workshop, all of it. The papers are with the lawyer in Nashville." He set the key in Toby's palm. "You do not have to live here. You do not have to do anything with it. But it is yours. You hear me?" "Yes, sir." "Good." Cyrus closed Toby's fingers around the key. He stayed on the property in Harlan that one night after the funeral. Cyrus made him stay. He slept in the guest room, the same room Otis Freeman had slept in once in 1979, the only time Otis ever came to visit Bo after Bo had founded the chapter. The bed was the same bed. The window was the same window. Toby slept for 10 hours. He had not slept for 10 hours since he was 8 years old. The next morning, he rode home down Route 12 on the Shovelhead. Cyrus rode behind him. The two of them did not speak. They did not need to. The bike under Toby was an old machine and a new responsibility. The man behind him was an old man and an old debt and an old kind of love Toby was only just beginning to understand. At the corner of Maple and 4th, Cyrus peeled off and rode south. Toby parked the Shovelhead in the back bay of Vance Auto. He covered it with a clean canvas tarp. He did not start the engine again for 12 years. 12 years is a long time in a small town. Long enough for a boy to become a man. Long enough for a one-bay garage on the corner of Maple and 4th to become 3 garages across 3 counties. Long enough for the news clipping about a 17-year-old kid and 200 bikers to yellow on the wall above the register. Long enough for the crayon drawing on the refrigerator to be moved into a glass frame and hung on a workshop wall where no morning sun could touch it. Long enough for Tobias Vance to forget what it felt like to count $43 in a shoebox under his bed. Long enough for Booker Greaves, who had arrived at the garage with a black eye and walked out 3 years later with a journeyman's certificate, to grow into a man with a wife and 2 kids, and a manager's title at the 2nd Vance Auto location out on Highway 41. The 3rd location out in Cookville was managed by another former apprentice named Wesley Holt, who had come into the program at 15 and stayed 11 years. Long enough for Nana Odessa to live 8 good years in a soft recliner with a needlepoint on her lap, watching her grandson on the local news, watching him hire boys. Nobody else would hire watching him grow up tall and quiet and good. Before she died peacefully in her own bed, with one hand on Toby's hand and one hand on her Bible. Long enough for 400 Hells Angels to ride to a small Baptist cemetery in Redville on a Tuesday afternoon in May, 4 years after Bo, to lay her to rest. Cyrus had given the eulogy at that one too. Lurleen Boone had brought a sheet cake. Long enough for Cyrus Pruitt to age slowly, gracefully, into the old man Bo had not lived to become. Cyrus was 75 now. He was still the ranking president of the Tennessee chapter. He used a cane on bad days. He called Toby every Saturday morning at 9 sharp. Long enough for Lurleen Boone, now 73, still running the diner. Still slow on her feet to start setting aside a corner booth for Toby every Friday night. He sat in it every Friday night. Booker often joined him. Sometimes Cyrus drove down from Harlan for it. Sometimes it was just Toby and his coffee, and the corner booth and the smell of fried onions and the sound of the buzzing neon sign. Long enough for a chair on a porch in Harlan to never be moved. Long enough for an unopened bottle of 30-year-old bourbon to sit on a shelf in Bo's study, exactly where Bo had left it untouched. Cyrus had not moved it either. Some bottles do not get opened. Some bottles are the way you mark a kind of time, long enough for the 1972 Shovelhead to sit under a clean canvas tarp in the back bay of Vance Auto. Toby had not started it since the funeral. He cleaned it once a month. He oiled the chain. He kept the tires inflated. He never sat on it. That was Toby Vance at 29 years old, 6'1", broad through the shoulders, a close-cropped beard just starting to show the first quiet sign of gray at the chin. He wore the same kind of work shirt every day. Navy blue cotton. T. Vance stitched in white over the left pocket. His hands were the hands of a real mechanic now, calloused along the palm. A faint white scar across the back of his right hand from a slipped wrench when he was 23. There was nothing of the scared boy on the porch of Maple Street left in him, or so he told himself. Nana Odessa had died with her last words being baby. Do not carry this house on your back. Live a little. Let somebody love you back for once. He had told her he would. He had lied. Because for 4 years after that morning, Toby Vance had run 3 garages, opened a free apprentice program for at-risk teenagers, sat on the board of 2 community charities in Redville, and not gone on a single date. Not one. Booker Greaves had given up trying to fix that part of him. Booker had a wife and 2 kids of his own now. He had stopped asking Toby what he did on Sundays, because the answer was always the same. Toby drove out to Harland. Toby sat on Bo's old porch. Toby cleaned Bo's old shovel head. Toby went home. That was Sunday. That was every Sunday for 12 years. It was a Tuesday afternoon in the late fall when the doctor said the word. Cardiomyopathy. Toby was sitting in an exam room at Vanderbilt. He had been there for follow-up tests after a fainting episode in the workshop 2 weeks earlier. He had told Booker it was dehydration. He had told himself it was nothing. He had been wrong. The doctor was very gentle. He used softer words first. Wall thickness, reduced output, inherited pattern. Then he used the word transplant. Then he used the words 6 months. Toby asked very quietly whether his father had ever been examined for this. The doctor's face changed. He looked down at the chart. He looked up. He said, "Your records indicate your father died of acute cardiac arrest at age 34, untreated, presumably from the same inherited condition." Toby did not feel anything when the doctor said it. He just sat there, looked at the wall, said, "Okay," asked for the discharge paperwork, drove home. He did not tell Booker. He did not tell Cyrus. He did not tell Lorleen. He did not tell the cardiologist's office to put him on the national transplant list. He took the prescription. He filled it at a pharmacy 2 towns over. He hid the pills in a drawer in the workshop office where nobody else went. He took them in the bathroom of the shop with the door locked. He told himself it was because he did not want to worry anyone. That was not the real reason. The real reason was a thing he could not have explained even to himself. The real reason was the same reason a 7-year-old boy had once written Vance Auto in crayon on the front of his refrigerator, and never let himself believe he could really have it. The real reason was an old, quiet voice in the back of his head, a voice that had been whispering to him for 23 years, and the voice said, "You do not get to be the one who is saved. Other people pay the price for you. That is how it works. You stay quiet. You do not go on the list. You do not take a heart someone else's family needs." He did not understand why he believed that. He just believed it. The afternoon he met Wren Hadley, the rain was falling on Route 12 the same way it had fallen the afternoon he had met Bo Whitlock 12 years earlier. He was driving the old white Vance Auto pickup truck back from a service call out near the county line. He took Route 12 because he always took Route 12. The road was a quiet thing to him, a long, thin scar across the map of his life. About 4 miles past the spot where Beau's tire had blown that night, there was a small sagging farmhouse set back from the road, peeling paint, yard full of dead weeds and busted appliances. Toby had passed it 1,000 times. He had never thought twice about it. That afternoon he heard the scream. He hit the brakes, pulled the truck onto the gravel shoulder, killed the engine, got out. A man's voice was yelling inside the house. Not yelling, roaring. The flat, thick roar of a man drunk on the cheap kind of whiskey. Then a thud. Then a second scream. Higher this time. A young woman. Toby was up the porch steps before he had time to think about it. The screen door was hanging off one hinge. He pushed through it, through the kitchen, down a short hallway smelling of old beer, into a small back room with one bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. A man was standing over a young woman. The man was middle-aged, 50 maybe, but ruined. Yellow skin, sunken eyes, 3-day stubble. He was holding a leather belt, doubled over. The woman was on the floor, curled on her side with her arms over her head. One sleeve of her shirt was torn. A trickle of blood was running from her hairline down the side of her face. She was small. That was the first thing Toby noticed. She was so small. The man swung the belt back to hit her again. Toby crossed the room in 2 steps. He caught the man's swing in midair, twisted the belt out of his hand, then, with one clean motion, hit him once. Just once. A right hook to the jaw. The man went down sideways, hit the wall, did not get up. Toby knelt beside the woman. "Easy now," he said. "Easy. I am not going to hurt you. I am here. Look at me." She looked up at him through the curtain of her own hair. Brown eyes, wide, glassy, terrified. "I have got you," he said. "I have got you, sweetheart. Come on, we are going." He scooped her up. She weighed nothing. He carried her down the hall, past the man on the floor who was still breathing but not moving, out through the busted screen door, into the rain, into the truck. She did not say one word the whole way to the garage. He learned her name in a hospital in the next county. Wren Hadley, 20 years old. He learned her mother's name was Eudora Hadley. He learned Eudora had died of breast cancer when Wren was 12. He learned the man on the floor of the farmhouse was Earl Murch, Wren's stepfather. He had legally married Eudora when Wren was 10. He had been Wren's only registered guardian for the last 8 years. He was a drunk. He had been one even when Eudora was alive. He had gotten worse after she died. Toby pressed charges that night. He filed a temporary protection order at the courthouse 2 days later. He hired a lawyer named Margaret Forsyth out of Nashville to start the paperwork on a more permanent solution. He moved Wren into the small apartment upstairs at the original Vance Auto Garage. Booker helped him paint the walls a soft yellow color. Lurleen Boone, now slow on her feet, drove down once a week and brought casseroles in glass dishes. She refused to leave until Wren had taken at least 3 bites. Wren did not speak much for the first week. She watched Toby work down in the bay through the small window at the top of the staircase. She did not come down. He did not push her. He left a plate of food on the top step at noon every day. He left another at 6. Sometimes she ate them. Sometimes she did not. He never made her account for the ones she did not. On the 8th day, she came down. She stood at the bottom of the stairs in an oversized hoodie, that Toby had bought her at the Walmart in Cookville. She watched him pull a transmission. She did not say anything. She just watched. After about 20 minutes, she said in a small voice, "What is that one called?" Toby looked up, smiled just a little. "This one is called a transmission," he said. "It is the part that decides what kind of speed the engine gets to be. You want to come closer?" She came closer. That was how it started. By the second month, she was eating dinner with him every night at the small table in the back office. By the third month, she was wearing his coveralls and trying to help him line up a head gasket. She always laughed when she got something wrong. It was a small, careful laugh, a laugh that sounded like a person who had spent years learning how to laugh quietly so as not to be heard. But it was a laugh. By the fourth month, she was calling him Pop. He did not ask her to. She just did it one morning over scrambled eggs. "Pop, you want me to grab another cup of coffee?" He froze with the carton of orange juice in his hand. He looked at her. She looked back at him, suddenly worried that she had said the wrong thing. He set the carton down. He cleared his throat. He said, "I would love another cup of coffee, sweetheart." She smiled. She poured him the coffee. She did not see him have to lean against the counter for a second to steady himself. By the fifth month, they were rebuilding Beau's old 1972 shovelhead together. Toby had been afraid of touching that bike since the funeral. But Wren needed a project, so they started one. Every Saturday afternoon, they were in the bay. He showed her how to use the impact wrench. He showed her how to read a torque spec. He showed her how to listen to the small click in a bolt when it had reached the right tension. She listened. She remembered. She took notes in a small spiral notebook with a chewed corner that she carried everywhere. One night, while they were sitting on the back porch of the apartment above the garage, she told him she had always wanted to be a nurse. She told him she had filled out the application to the community college 3 years ago, and Earl had found it and burned it in the kitchen sink in front of her. She did not cry while she told him. She said it like a person reading a grocery list. The next morning, he drove her down to Volunteer State Community College and walked her into the registrar's office and stood next to her while she filled out the application. He paid the application fee in cash. He paid the first semester tuition that afternoon. He drove her home. He did not tell her how much it had cost. She did not ask. There was one other thing she did in those months that Toby never quite understood. She watched him, in the way good nurses watch people, in the way people who are paying attention watch other people. She watched the small white pills he kept in his pocket. She watched the way he sometimes pressed a hand to his sternum when he thought no one was looking. She watched the way he took the stairs slower at night than he had at noon. She did not say anything, not for months. She just watched. One evening, while they were sitting at the small table in the office, she said very softly, "Pop, what are those pills?" He looked at her. He almost lied. He almost said vitamins. He almost said, "for my back." But he looked at her sitting across the table from him in his shop in his work shirt rolled up at the cuffs in the small, careful life he had built for her in 5 months. And he could not lie to her face. "It is for my heart," he said. "It is the same thing my grandmother had. Maybe the same thing my father had. The doctors say I do not have a lot of time. Maybe 6 months. I did not want you to worry. I did not want you to think you were going to lose somebody else." Wren did not move. She did not cry. She just reached across the table, took his hand in both of hers, lifted it, pressed his palm against her cheek. "Then we run out of time together, Pop," she said. "That is not the worst way." He did not know it then, But she said that sentence because she already knew her own. Earl Murch came back in the 5th month. He had finished a short jail sentence and gotten out early for a medical exemption. End-stage liver cirrhosis. He had maybe a year left if he was lucky. The doctors had told him to stop drinking. He had not stopped drinking. He came up the gravel driveway of Vance Auto one Tuesday afternoon drunk at 3 o'clock, screaming Wren's name. Toby met him at the bay door. He did not raise his hand to him. He did not need to. The court order was in his back pocket. He read it to Earl out loud, word for word, slowly, like a man reading a death sentence. Earl spat on the concrete. "She is still my daughter on paper," he said. "You hear me, boy? On paper. You cannot change that. I will never sign her away." Then he stumbled back to his truck, and Toby called the sheriff, and Earl was gone before sundown. But that night, Toby sat in the dark in his office for a long time, looking at the legal paperwork on his desk. The petition for adult adoption. Wren had turned 21 a week earlier. She was a legal adult. The adoption was a clerical act, mostly symbolic, but the law in Tennessee was very particular. To finalize it, the existing legal guardian had to sign a relinquishment, and the existing legal guardian was Earl Murch. Toby had been hoping Earl would sign. Earl had said he would never sign. For 1 week, Toby could not sleep. Wren's 21st birthday party was small. Lurleen baked the cake herself. Booker brought his 2 kids. Cyrus drove in from Harland with a wrapped gift the size of a shoebox. Toby gave Wren 2 presents. The first was the title and keys to the rebuilt 1972 Shovelhead. He had transferred it into her name that morning at the county clerk's office. He set the keys in her hand and watched her cry into her hands at the table for a long minute before she could speak. The second was a folder. Inside the folder was the petition for adoption. It was not signed by Earl. It would probably never be signed by Earl. But it was signed by Toby. And on the last page, on the line where the adoptive parent went, his signature was already there. T. Vance. She put the folder down. She wiped her eyes. She walked around the table. She put her arms around his neck. She said, "Papers do not matter, Pop. I have considered you my dad since the first night." He held her there for a long time. She fainted in the kitchen 40 minutes later. The ambulance ride to the hospital was 18 minutes. Toby sat in the back next to the gurney. He held her hand. Booker followed in the truck. Lurleen called Cyrus. Cyrus drove down from Harland and met them in the emergency room at 11:30 that night. The doctor pulled Toby into a small consultation room at 2 in the morning. He closed the door behind them. He sat down. He told Toby that Wren had been diagnosed 8 months earlier at a free clinic in Cookville with glioblastoma multiforme. He told Toby it was a brain cancer of the worst kind. He told Toby the median life expectancy from diagnosis was 12 to 15 months. He told Toby they were now at the 8-month mark. He told Toby Wren had refused all aggressive treatment because she could not afford it and had not wanted to be a burden on a stranger who had given her a place to live. Toby did not say anything for a long time. Then he said, "What do I have to do?" The doctor said, "You have to sign as her medical proxy." Then the doctor said something Toby was not prepared for. The doctor said, "But I have to tell you, until the adoption is finalized, the legal next of kin is still Earl Murch." Toby left the consultation room. He walked down a long fluorescent hallway. He stood in front of the window of Wren's room. She was asleep, small under the white blanket. Her hair was already starting to thin a little along the temples. He had not noticed before. He had assumed it was stress. It had not been stress. He pressed his forehead against the glass and stood there for a long time. The same fluorescent buzz he had stood under at 3 in the morning 12 years before. The same kind of hum a refrigerator makes in a kitchen on a small street in Redville. The hum of a life winding down quietly while a boy stands in front of it and tries not to look. He sold the second Vance Auto location to Booker for $1. Booker tried to refuse. Toby would not let him. The paperwork was filed by Wednesday morning. The transfer was complete by Friday. He sold the third location to a regional chain for $900,000, cash. Cyrus signed off on the Hells Angels Community Fund chipping in another $75,000 for experimental care. Toby took Ren to Vanderbilt Medical Center for the next stage of treatment. Aggressive, experimental, radiation, chemotherapy, trial drugs. They worked at first. Then they stopped working. By the second month, Ren had lost most of her hair. By the third month, she had lost 20 pounds. She still smiled when he came into the room. She still called him Pop. She still wrote in her little spiral notebook with the chewed corner. He still took the pills in the bathroom of her hospital wing. One night, she caught him. She rolled over in the hospital bed. She had been pretending to sleep. She watched him fish the orange bottle out of his coat pocket and shake one pill into his palm. He looked up. She was looking at him. "Pop," she said quietly. "I know." He sat down on the edge of her bed. He put his hand over his eyes. "How long?" she said. "A few weeks," he said. "Maybe a month. They wanted to put me on the list. I did not let them." Why? He did not have an answer. Or rather, he had an answer. But it was the same answer he had carried for 23 years. And he had still never said it out loud. Ren waited. Then she said, "You think you do not deserve it, don't you?" He looked up at her. She was 21 years old. She was dying. And she had seen straight through him. I do not know why he whispered. I have just always known it. Other people pay so I can be here. I do not know why I think that. Ren looked at him for a long time. Then she said, "I want to find out. Before I go, I want to know why my pop carries something he never put down." That was the night she asked the nurses to set up a phone call for her, without telling Toby. That was the night she called a very old woman she had only met once, the day Nana Odessa's old neighbor had brought Ren a casserole at the apartment above the garage. An old woman who had known Toby's grandmother her entire life. An old woman who had been the only person besides Nana Odessa herself who knew the whole story of a 6-year-old boy who collapsed on a playground in 2003 and what came after. Ren talked to that old woman for over an hour. She wrote everything down in her little spiral notebook. Then she sealed it inside an envelope. She wrote on the front in her careful, loopy handwriting, "Do not open this until you wake up after the surgery. Promise me." She slid it into the top drawer of the bedside table. She did not tell Toby it was there. 3 weeks later, Toby collapsed in the back office of the original Vance Auto location at 11:30 in the morning. His heart stopped for 140 seconds. Booker, who had stopped by to drop off paperwork, performed CPR while a customer called 911. He came back. The ambulance took him to Vanderbilt. He was admitted to the floor directly above Ren's, 2 floors away from her in the same building. That same night, Ren's tumor entered the brainstem. The bleed was small at first, then it was not. By morning, she was on a ventilator. She was awake, but she was failing. The neurology team came in. The cardiology team came in. The 2 teams sat down together. They ran the cross-match between Wren and Toby on a hunch. Perfect match. Type, size, antigens. Even the small things you do not usually get right. The lead cardiologist looked at the lab results and said, "In 27 years, I have never seen a match this clean." Wren signed the donor form with her left hand. Her right hand no longer worked. Then the social worker stepped forward. She had a clipboard. She said, "Miss Hadley, I am so sorry. Because of the structure of directed donation with a non-list recipient, and because the adoption is not finalized, we need the consent of your legal next of kin to avoid any post-mortem dispute." "Who is that?" Wren whispered through the breathing tube. "A man named Earl Murch." Wren closed her eyes. Then she opened them. "Bring him," she said. The hospital sent 2 social workers and 1 off-duty police officer to the state prison medical wing. Earl Murch was in a hospital bed. End-stage cirrhosis. He weighed 110 pounds. His skin was the color of a yellow grocery bag. He was awake. Barely. They explained the situation to him in plain words. Earl looked at the ceiling for a long time. Then he said, "Take me to her." He could not walk. They wheeled him in a hospital chair into a van. 40 miles. 2 officers escorted him at every step. He smelled of cheap soap and old whiskey, and something deeper underneath. He did not look at the officers. He did not look at the road. He looked at his own hands in his lap and turned them over and over. When they wheeled him into Wren's room, he stopped looking at his hands. She was lying in the bed with the breathing tube taped to the side of her mouth. Half her hair was gone. She turned her head when she heard the wheels. She looked at him. Earl Murch began to cry. Not the loud crying of a man who knows he is being watched. The quiet crying of a man who has finally run out of every other thing he had. He pushed himself up out of the wheelchair. His legs barely held him. The officer steadied him. He shuffled to the side of her bed. He took her left hand in both of his shaking hands. "Lil Bird," he whispered. It was the first time in 9 years he had called her by the name her mother had given her. "I am so sorry," he said. "I have been sorry for 8 years. I never said it. I never said it to you because I was a coward. I never said it to Eudora because she was already gone. I never said it because I knew it would not be enough. It was never going to be enough." His voice broke. He kept going anyway. "I lost your mother, and I did not know how to be a father to you alone," he said. "So I drank instead. I drank and I hit a little girl. And I told myself it was the bottle and not me. It was me, Wren. It was always me." He pressed her hand to his forehead. He cried for a long time. When he could speak again, he looked at her. "What do you need from me, Lil Bird?" he said. "Anything. Whatever it is. Tell me. Whatever you need. Whatever I can still give. It is yours." She could barely speak around the tube. The nurse leaned in and helped her form the words. "Sign," Wren whispered. "Sign for me. Let my heart go to him. Please." Earl Murch looked up at the social worker. The social worker laid the clipboard on the rolling table, the pen with it. He signed Earl J. Murch in shaking blue ink. Then the social worker placed another form in front of him. The relinquishment of guardianship. Transfer of paternal status to Tobias Vance. The form Toby had been waiting 9 months for. Earl Murch looked at it for a long time. Then he picked up the pen again. He signed. He laid the pen down. He looked at Wren one more time. He bent down very slowly. He kissed her forehead just under the bandage line. He whispered, "I never deserved you, lil' bird. I am so glad someone finally did." He let the officers wheel him back out of the room. He did not turn around. He did not look back. He died 5 days later in the prison medical wing. The orderly who washed his body found a small ribbon folded inside the breast pocket of his hospital gown, wrapped around a photograph yellow with age. A young woman with dark hair, holding a girl of about 9 on her lap. A younger Earl, standing behind them, smiling his hand on the woman's shoulder. On the back of the photograph in faded pen, 3 words, "My 2 girls." Ran past at 4:47 the next morning. She did not feel any of it. The medication team had made sure of that. Toby was wheeled in by an orderly from 2 floors up his own IV pole, rolling beside him. He sat next to her bed. He held her hand. He did not speak. There was no need to speak. Everything had already been said. The team waited for him to nod. He nodded. The transplant began 90 minutes later. 8 hours of surgery. 500 Hells Angels in the parking lot of Vanderbilt that morning. They had come from Tennessee, from Kentucky, from Alabama, from Georgia. They stood in the cold in their cuts. They did not speak. They did not smoke. They did not move. They waited for a boy and a girl they did not know to either come out of the building alive or not. Cyrus Pruitt sat in a folding chair near the front doors with a thermos of coffee in his lap. He did not get up the entire 8 hours. He wore Beau's old cut over his own. He had taken it out of the closet in Beau's old study where he had kept it untouched for 12 years. He had put it on. He had ridden it to the hospital. He sat in the folding chair with both cuts on one over the other 2 layers of leather and rockers and the weight of 2 presidents pressing down on him. And he did not move for 8 hours. Toby came out alive. He was unconscious for 3 days. He woke up on the 4th morning. He felt the new rhythm in his chest before he opened his eyes. He felt it slow. He felt it patient. He felt it kind. On the bedside table, when he finally opened his eyes, there were 4 things. A folded letter sealed in an envelope with, "Do not open until you wake up after the surgery. Promise me," written in Wren's careful, loopy hand. The cream-colored business card. B. Whitlock. The card he had been given on Route 12 when he was 17 years old. Cyrus had brought it from the safe. The framed crayon drawing of Vance Otto. The one his 7-year-old self had drawn for a man whose name Toby had not been able to remember for 23 years. And the small Polaroid of a tall, thin man in coveralls leaning against the open hood of a Ford pickup, smiling. Toby looked at the Polaroid for a long time. He did not recognize the face. Then he did. He did all at once. His chest opened up. The new heart inside him kept beating. Steady, patient, kind, as if the heart itself had a memory, and the memory was helping him. He saw himself at 6 years old. He saw the playground. He saw the moment when the world had gone sideways, and he had hit the grass, and the sky had turned to a long white tunnel of light. He saw the inside of a hospital room. He saw a doctor saying numbers his mother did not understand. He saw his father. Solomon Vance, soul, tall, thin, coveralls smudged with engine grease, sitting beside the bed, smiling because he had to smile, holding a small brown hand inside a big brown hand. He saw 2 years. He saw Saul working a day shift and then a night shift, and then driving long-haul trucks on the weekends, sleeping in the cab of a truck so he could save the cost of a hotel, coming home Sunday afternoons with circles under his eyes that didn't go away, pulling Toby up onto his lap, putting a wrench in his hand, showing him how to turn it, teaching him how to hear the click in the bolt when the tension was right. He saw himself at 7, sitting at the kitchen table with crayons, drawing a little garage on a piece of construction paper, writing Vance Auto across the top in green crayon, handing it to Saul, Saul lifting him up and kissing him on top of the head and saying, "When you are strong enough, son. Just you and me. Vance Auto, you and me." He saw the day it ended. He saw himself at 8 years old, standing at the door of a workshop on Industrial Boulevard, standing in the doorway, seeing Saul on his back on the concrete floor next to a green Chevy pickup, hands still curled around a wrench, other men kneeling beside him, the shop fan still turning above him, the radio still playing. He saw himself say the word Dad. He saw his father not answer. He saw, 3 months later, the kitchen of the same little house on Maple Street, his mother Verda in her bathrobe, sitting at the kitchen table at 4 in the morning, not eating, not sleeping, not talking. He saw her funeral. He saw Nana Odessa put a hand on the back of his neck at the cemetery and steer him into the back seat of the car. He saw the bedroom in Redville that was going to be his new room. He saw Nana Odessa sit on the edge of that bed 3 nights later. He saw her say, "Baby, your daddy worked himself to the bone trying to give you a long life. He gave it to you. That is not a debt you have to pay back. That is a gift. You hear me? A gift. Now go to sleep." He had heard her. He had not understood her. For 23 years, he had not understood her. He understood her now. He took the envelope off the bedside table. He opened it with hands that did not shake. Inside were 3 things. The first was the relinquishment form signed in blue ink by Earl J. Murch, and under it the adoption decree stamped and dated and signed by a family court judge in Davidson County. T. Vance, adoptive father. W. Hadley Vance, adopted daughter. Filed the morning before Wren died. The second was a photocopy of an honors associate degree in nursing from Volunteer State Community College. Wren had completed 70% of her program in 11 months. The dean had granted her the degree honorarily 2 weeks before she passed. The third was a folded letter, 2 pages, pen. He read it. "Pop, I am writing this on a Thursday night. The nurses think I am asleep. I am not. You will read this after a doctor wakes you up. Do not be sad first. Be glad first. I want that. I asked Nana Odessa's old friend, Mrs. Talbot, what you would not tell me. She told me. I wrote it all down. The pages are at the end of this letter. Read them when you are ready. Or do not. I think you needed to remember on your own. Your dad did not die for you. He died because he loved you. Those are not the same thing. Forgive him. Forgive yourself. Forgive Earl. He did one good thing in his life, and it was for you. Maybe also a little for me. Then go love somebody the way they all loved you, the way you love me. Save them, Pop. All of them. 47 names. They are in this envelope. They are kids in this state with no insurance and bad hearts and worse households. Save them. Build them a place. Put my name on it if you want to. But do not put my name on it if it makes you cry too much. Put your dad's name on it instead. I would like that. My heart is yours now. Please use it. Please live with it. Please get tired with it. Please fall in love with it. Please make somebody else laugh with it. You taught me how to laugh, so you have to keep doing it. That is your job now. Your daughter, Wren Hadley Vance. P.S. There is one thing you have to do for me. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe next year. Just one day. Open Beau's envelope. He has been waiting 12 years for you to be ready. You are ready now. Toby pressed the letter to his chest. He cried for a long time. The new heart inside him kept beating. Steady, patient, kind. 6 months later, the Wren Hadley Foundation opened on the corner of Maple and 4th. Built on the former site of the original Vance Auto location, expanded into 3 adjacent buildings that the community fund had quietly purchased while Toby was recovering. A community heart clinic for uninsured children on the ground floor. A free trade school for high school dropouts on the 2nd floor. A long-term care facility for terminal patients with no family on the 3rd floor. 12 beds, all free. Cyrus Pruitt presided over the ribbon cutting from his wheelchair. Lurleen Boone sat next to him in a plastic chair, a coffee cup in her hand, watching the crowd with eyes that had been watching crowds for 50 years. The plaque by the front door read, "Hands that know how to work, never have to beg. And hearts that know how to give, never truly die." Founded by Tobias Vance in memory of Solomon Vance, Verda Vance, Odessa Vance, Beauregard Whitlock, Marlene Whitlock, Otis Freeman, and Wren Hadley Vance. Inside, 7 framed photographs hung above the reception desk in a single long row. Otis Freeman in front of a small welding shop in Nashville. The picture was dated 1962 and faded pen at the bottom corner. He was holding a torch. He was smiling the smile of a man who had decided to make a 16-year-old runaway his life's project. Beauregard Whitlock on the porch of the workshop in Harland holding a coffee mug looking off into the hills. Marlene Whitlock Beau's wife sitting on a fence rail in Harland with 2 horses behind her, laughing at something the photographer had said. Solomon Vance in coveralls in front of a green Ford pickup, smudge of engine grease on his cheek. The kind of grin a man gives his son when the son is still small enough to be picked up. Verda Vance in a yellow Sunday dress, her hand on Saul's arm, looking at Saul instead of the camera. Odessa Vance seated in a recliner in her own living room, a needlepoint in her lap. Her one good eye looking straight into the camera with quiet love. And Wren Hadley Vance, 20 years old, in a Vance Auto coveralls top, her chewed corner spiral notebook in her lap, smiling the careful, quiet smile of a girl who had finally learned how to laugh in front of somebody. Toby Vance opened Beau's envelope that morning. In Beau's neat handwriting, the letter inside said only this: "Son, if you are reading this, the boy made it through. I am glad. You took a long road. I knew you would. The lot at Maple and 4th is yours free and clear. The community fund is yours to run. Cyrus will hand you the keys to the trust the morning you turn 30. I left you my shovelhead. I left you my bourbon. I left you everything that matters. Do me one favor. Find a kid like you were. Sit with him in the rain. Tell him a true kindness never ends. It only lives on in the one who passes it forward. Pass it on, son. Pass it on. Beau." Toby refolded the letter, slid it into his shirt pocket, stepped out the front door of the new building. The 1972 shovelhead waited at the curb, restored by Wren's hands. The patch tube from Route 12 still inside its rear tire, because Toby had never been able to bring himself to change it out. He set his palm on the timing cover. He felt the new heart beating in his chest. He swung his leg over the seat. He kicked it once. The engine rolled up like slow thunder. Behind him, 800 Hells Angels lined Maple Street. Every chapter in the South had sent a delegation. The road was a sea of chrome and crimson, stretching from Maple all the way down to the on-ramp of Route 12. Cyrus tipped his old gray head from the porch. Lurleen, sitting in her plastic chair on the sidewalk in front of her diner across the street, raised her coffee cup once and set it down. Toby Vance let out the clutch. He rolled down Maple Street. The chrome and engines rolled behind him, out onto Route 12, toward the sunrise, the wind on his face, the new heart steady in his chest. A line of 800 brothers riding behind him into the morning. And in his ear, very softly, in a voice he had not heard in 23 years but had remembered for 10,000 days, his father whispered, "When you are strong enough, son, just you and me. Vance Auto. You and me." Toby smiled. "Yes, Dad," he said, "just you and me, forever."